Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the astrology of September 2026. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon out there. We're going to be going on a deep dive of all the astrology for the next month ahead. We're going to be breaking it down in sections called the decans, or 10-degree sections of the zodiac. We're going to be talking about Virgo themes and Libra themes today. We've got some Scorpio things sprinkled in with Venus entering into that sign as well. So we're going to be going on a journey. We're going to talk about all of the aspects that are going on around the month, and we're going to talk about new moons and full moons. We've got all sorts of things to unpack today, so buckle in, and I hope that you're having a wonderful afternoon. Before I dive in, just welcome a couple friends here. Javiera is here. What's up, Javiera? Says, hey, hope everyone's doing well. Hugs stopping in from Canada. Nice to see you, Javiera. Yeah, if you're joining me in the chat here today, drop me a little note. Let me know that you're with me live here today, or if you're listening after the fact. I love seeing comments from you after you've been engaging with the broadcast. So welcome, friends, and really happy that you're here today. Okay, a couple announcements before we keep rolling forward here. All right, so of course we're talking the astrology of September 2026. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. If you are in need of guidance and you want to reach out for a reading, I'm available for various services, including Mythos readings, where I'm breaking down your natal promise through an examination of your natal chart. We have Kairos readings, which are for timing and seeing what the next few months ahead are going to look like for you so that you can prepare with pronoia or foresight, so that you can go in with your eyes open and with a big spotlight on anything that might be waiting for you. I also have like one question readings as well. If you have one particular issue that's really standing out to you, you can go through that as well. And I also do astrological tutoring. So if you want to learn more about how to work with these things on your own, and you like incorporating tarot and the decans and fixed stars and Hellenistic traditional techniques into those aspects, then I might be someone that you might want to work with. Okay, so find me over at spencermichaud.com. You can also visit the store over there with pre-recorded webinars with my decans webinars, with 12 different webinars with all 36 decans represented, where it's kind of just a big brain dump of mythology, of fixed stars, of tarot, etc. I also have a series I did with my partner Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo called Dignity and Devotion, where we did a deep dive on the 7 traditional planets and how to craft a ritual and magical practice around them. Then there's another talk called Stars and Cards, where I talk about the connections, the esoteric connections with the tarot and astrology as well. You can also find Tanya over at Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. She has some wonderful new products that can help you through eclipse season. We're going through eclipse season right now, so everything is sort of amplified. But this Peaceful Home Venus and Taurus oil, I'm wearing this right now. This is one of my favorite oils that Tanya's ever made in Third Coast Mojo. It's just very relaxing. It's very peaceful. It's very just kind of chill, and it helps you appreciate all the nature around you. It's good for like getting in touch with good food and just being grounded in your body. For a Taurus moon such as myself, it's one of my favorite things. So check out Peaceful Home over at Third Coast Mojo, made with Venus in Taurus. She also has a product called Iron Teeth with exalted Mars and Capricorn with beaver elements to it. If you're trying to bite through something challenging in your life and get to work, because I know we all are feeling pressure to get to work lately as we enter into Virgo season. Also, there's another one called Luminous Luna with the exalted moon in Taurus. Another one that's really great. I'm kind of highlighting some of the Taurus energy today. There's a lot of good Taurus energy floating around, especially at Third Coast Mojo. If you need to feel good within your body or need to calm your emotions a little bit. A lot of times when we're going through stuff astrologically or otherwise, we just get amped up, especially during eclipse season, and having something that'll help regulate that nervous system and calm us down emotionally and bring some, reliability or some a good rhythm to our life, right? That can be an exalted moon in Taurus. Crown of Success in Leo. We are still in Leo season as I'm recording this, so if you're trying to become more visible and you want to have some more confidence, that's a great one for that. And then finally, Master Key with Mercury and Virgo. Great one for focus and concentration. I use that a lot when I'm doing, especially these broadcasts, when I have to manage a lot of different details. So really great stuff. Check her out, Third Coast Mojo. You can also find us over at my newsletter. Subscribe to the newsletter, find out when I'm going live, when there's new products released for Third Coast Mojo, when new classes are going to be offered. I've got some new classes that are coming soon for the fall. So if you want to be first on the list to know when that's happening, make sure you're signed up for that. And you can also support the channel by purchasing a super chat while I'm live here today, or becoming a patron at buymeacoffee.com. This helps me keep the lights on, and thank you so much for everyone who has been able to contribute in that fashion. It really does help me continue to do this work, and it's helping me meet my needs and then help me to hopefully meet your needs. Okay, so that's what I've got as far as announcements go. Let's start diving into this. What do you say? What do you say? So we're talking the astrology, September 2026. I'm going to start out with some big picture thoughts, just some overall vibes, themes. We have a lot of astrology in August that we are living through as I'm recording this. Eclipse season is a very faded time period in our lives where sort of the deck is being reshuffled. We are experiencing a lot of what the ancient Greeks would call hemermene, or fate that is not necessarily avoidable. Like, we have to kind of face it. It's something that may be just baked into our lives and into our stories. But through that hemermene, we start to understand our ananke, how we may be acting in ignorance or just our knee-jerk reactions to things without understanding, or we might be compelled through the forces of the planets to act in a certain way. And hopefully today we're going to be learning about pronoia, like when we shine our light of awareness on this, how do we make better choices in the moment to alleviate some of the suffering in our lives and in the lives of others, hopefully. So, big picture thoughts. This eclipse is resetting the narrative themes. We're coming off of a new moon solar eclipse in Leo with the South Node, K2, where we are draining out or stepping down off of thrones of power, stepping away from positions or beliefs that may be influenced by pride or by excess subjectivity. We're probably learning some skills about how to become more objective, maybe how to communicate in ways that are less reactive, less subjective, and trying to maybe see things from multiple perspectives. I know personally I've been doing a lot of work with the tenets of nonviolent communication, and I've been trying to see if I can apply those to larger social issues as well as individual relationships. So I'm still in the process of that, but that to me is a way of becoming more objective, of being able to connect that objectivity with our feelings and the needs that those feelings are trying to get met, right? Connecting all of those things so that we can make requests rather than demands and start dismantling a domination culture and start building one that's built on cooperation and respect and equality. So all of those things are baked into some of the things we're experiencing with this eclipse that we had in August. We have another eclipse coming as I'm recording this with the full moon in Pisces, where we may be feeling compelled to go off in search of a higher purpose or a higher meaning, maybe leaving behind some of the material things that we've built. So that's still to come. That's at the end of August. So we're starting September coming off of all of that. And again, we're still living through this as I'm recording it. Okay. We got Carl joining us. What's up, Carl? Says, hi, Spencer. Kooky Uncle Carl here at Padfoot 1058. Carl, it's nice to see you, friend. Carl's one of my super, I don't know. The first thing I was going to say was super fans, but really what he is a super friend. And thank you, Carl, for being here. And really appreciate you. And we have some really some great people in the chat today. Javiera and Carl, like just some of the best people that I've worked with. So thank you for being here today, friends. Okay, so some of these big picture thoughts. Cardinal tensions to begin the month of September. Okay, we're going to be starting out the month with a Mars-Saturn square. And we are going to be seeing Mars moving through Cancer. We just had Mars ingress into Cancer very recently, out of Gemini, still out of bounds. We've got Mars out of bounds as I'm recording this on August the 14th, but it'll be back in bounds by the time September starts. It will still be in its fall or in a place where it is not as comfortable as it would normally be. Mars is a planet that likes to sever and separate. Cancer is a sign ruled by the moon that likes to bring things together. It likes to merge things together. It likes to absorb light, likes to collect things. It's soft and gentle. Mars is sometimes very aggressive and cutting. It is an awkward marriage of planet and house and sign. And then we also have Saturn in its fall. So we have two planets in fall squaring off to one another. Saturn is going to be in the sign of Aries, another strange bedfellow, I guess you could say, because Saturn likes to strive towards objectivity oftentimes. Aries can be very subjective. Saturn encourages patience in the long view. Aries has a sense of immediacy. We have a quality of taking responsibility for not only our own needs, but for the needs of others when we're crafting laws that creates the structures of society. Oftentimes in Aries, there can be a very subjective perspective. So awkward places for both of these malefics that are going to be squaring off to one another. What is fascinating to me about that is, we'll talk about this when we dive into the dailies, but Saturn's retrograde right now. And there is a theory going around. I don't know if it's going around. There is a theory where a retrograded, fallen, or exalted planet acts as its opposite. And this is a concept that comes from Vedic astrology or Eastern astrology, Jyotisha. And if that's true, we might be seeing a return a little bit to maybe some more objectivity, maybe some interest in working with others to create structures and partnerships. But that tension between Cancer and Aries, and then these planets that are going to be moving into Libra towards the end of the month, is what we're talking about with cardinal tensions. Cardinal signs are the initiating signs of spring, of summer, not summer, spring, fall, right? Winter. We have the Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and Aries signs as the cardinal signs. They initiate things. So we might be trying to start new things, but we have different competing needs. Pluto is also out of bounds for the entire month of September. It went out of bounds the day before the eclipse. This is a concept that we've been talking about at length on the channel, that I've been doing some research on with a book that I don't think the book's in front of me, but it's called Persephone's Revolution by Rosie Finn. And it talks about the planet of death, of transformation, rebirth, of bringing things to the surface that have been repressed. It's a planet that speaks a lot towards power structures and those who are dominated and those who are subjugated, or the people who are trying to dominate, and the people that are the victims of that, I guess you could say. When we have the South declination out of bounds period, we often see a period of social reform. The Northern out of bounds period, we see a period of rising authoritarianism, a period of like excessive force. And then on the opposite scale, where we see the Southern declination, we see sort of reforms taking place. Now, they're not always peaceful. There are violent reforms and revolutions. But I think it is interesting to see that we have a lot of impetus towards restoring power back to the people. Now, this is very fascinating to me because Pluto is going to go in and out of bounds in its southern declination for the next 10 years or so. But we have a period from this August 11th date all the way until December the 10th for the end of the year, where we might see some reforms. We might see some pushes towards rebalancing power structures that have gotten out of whack. Now, how do we do so peacefully? How do we do so restoratively rather than with retribution? This is this concept that I've been reading about today, restorative justice versus retribution-based justice. It's not necessarily just about punishment, but about actually restoring peace and restoring a way to communicate change that can break the cycle of violence rather than continue to perpetuate it. These are all things that I'm interested in the moment. Now, the sun's also going to have another malefic enclosure period towards the end of the month, so we'll talk about that. So those are sort of some bigger picture thoughts. Mercury will also emerge from under the beams in the first degrees of Libra, so we will examine that as well. We might be thinking of new ways to be a peacemaker. We might be thinking of new ways that we might have to see something from someone else's perspective and practice empathy. Empathy, that's really important. How do we put ourselves in someone else's shoes and truly sit with them objectively? I've been reading a lot of literature that speaks towards some of the highest spiritual work that we can do is becoming objective, of being able to sit with things without judgment, to be able to merge back into a oneness out of the division of duality. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's challenging. It is counterintuitive to the way that we've been raised and the way that we've been programmed, I think, to think. But I do think it is worthwhile to engage with that. And I think Mercury is going to start to help us to understand some of those, the ways that we might think dualistically and the way that we might be able to step outside of duality potentially. Okay. Thanks, Javier. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, friend. Okay. So let's start looking at the medium range view. Let's start with lunations. So these are just some dates to keep in mind for September. Now, if you are new to the channel, do me a huge favor, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. What we do here on the Spencer Michaud Astrology channel is we try to be pretty thorough with the details. There's a lot of information that I like to talk about because I feel like context and nuance matters. And I think that we try not to rush through it. We try to really give it some space to breathe. I know that in our modern society and culture, that is something that is difficult to reclaim as our time and create space. But I think that's the intention and the goal here. So with these lunations, we start off with the last quarter moon on the 4th of September at 11 degrees of Gemini. Okay, so this is going to be the Gemini moon squaring the Virgo sun. In the second decans of those signs, we have a second decan sun that is attempting to enclose spirit into matter and to refine something, whereas the last quarter Gemini second decan moon may be asking us to reduce distractions, to make some choices, to reduce our desire to keep exploring and gathering more and more information. This is sort of the process of eliminating excessive thoughts, excessive ideas, etc., so that we can make it real, right? It's not just that we're just cutting off our ability to be flexible. It's more about how do we make something out of this? How do we ground it? How do we enclose it into a form that can be delivered on this plane of existence? So that's our last quarter moon on the 4th of September. The new moon will be on September the 10th at 18 degrees Virgo, the same decan. So we may have some really great ideas about planting seeds for how we want to enclose our ideas and our dreams into physical form. We have a first quarter moon on the 18th of September at 25 degrees of Sagittarius. That decan of Sagittarius is going to be squaring the third and final decan of Virgo, where we may be attempting to bring a material process to a close, but we may have to make a very strong physical effort to do so with the moon, first quarter moon in Sagittarius. We may run the risk of burning out our bodies to get something across the finish line, and we have to be careful about shouldering too heavy of a burden. All right, we have to learn how to delegate around that first quarter moon potentially. And then we have a full moon at 3 degrees of Aries on the 26th of September. That full moon will be pretty close to Neptune. So we may have to, in an attempt to see things from someone else's perspective, we may have to get in touch with our own needs, with our own feelings, and be able to balance those out and communicate them effectively to other people so that people know where we stand and we know where they stand. And we have to be receptive to hearing other people's needs and desires and feelings. This is something that's really just been kind of blowing my mind about the Marshall Rosenberg material. Is a lot of the conflicts we find ourselves in is just because we are not connected to our emotions or our needs. And we live in a society that tries to actively disconnect us from those things, because a society and individuals that are well connected with what they need are harder to control. So I think that when we experience this rise in emotional intelligence, it makes us want to make changes. That a lot of times the power structures that we have inherited or born into or are being perpetuated make it difficult to work through those things. So how do we become more conscious? How do we become more aware of what we need so that we can build the type of world that will support that? Okay, so those are our lunations. We have ingresses of planets into new signs in September. We have Venus moving into Scorpio on September the 10th. That September the 10th is a real pivotal point in the month. We're going to have a new moon in Virgo. We're going to have Venus moving into Scorpio, the sign where Venus will retrograde in October. So we have an October Venus retrograde that's going to be happening. We just had Venus, by the way, go into her retrograde shadow at about 22 degrees of Libra. That will be happening towards the end of August. Okay, so we haven't had it happen yet, but it will be happening towards the end of August. Mercury will also enter into Libra on the 10th. So we have a new moon in Virgo, Venus moving into Scorpio, and Mercury moving into Libra, all on the same day, September 10th. So circle that one on your calendar and say, this is when a lot of things are going to start shifting, September the 10th. Okay. We have our fall equinox, okay, on the 22nd of September, where the sun moves into Libra, where we have equal day and equal night. And then the night starts to take precedence. It starts to become longer than the daytime hours. So the shift of the scales. Okay. We also have Mars moving into Leo on the 27th of September. And then Mercury is moving very quickly. It's going to move all the way through Libra from the second week of September into Scorpio by the end of the month. So on the 30th, Mercury will already be into Scorpio, which will be preparing for its retrograde in Scorpio as well. So we are going to have a Venus retrograde in Scorpio and a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. Okay. Solar phases. Solar phases are the relationship that a planet has either to the sun, whether it is conjoining the sun and being reborn in the heart of the sun, that's called a cazimi, or when it is emerging from under the beams and making itself visible, or going under the beams and becoming invisible. Those were important oracular moments for ancient astrologers. We also consider a solar phase whether the planet is stationing retrograde or direct. So we have two of those in September. We have Uranus at 5 degrees of Gemini stationing retrograde. So we may be reviewing the way that we are shattering old expectations around communication. I know this has been happening for me. I am doing a lot of deep, challenging work on how I communicate. As a Leo rising, with the third decan of Leo, there have been times in my life where instead of making requests, I felt the need to demand something, or like I had the sun, the ruler of Leo, has strong inclinations towards a desire to dominate. And I remember that feeling very succinctly, especially as a younger Leo rising. I had that urge in sports. I was an athlete. I was a musician. Where I would go to gigs and I'd be like, I want to outshine everybody. I want to dominate the stage. And I'm learning that feeling is not necessarily appropriate in all situations, number one. It is especially not appropriate when we have the North Node in Aquarius 3 and the South Node in Leo 3. And there's a lot of learning that can happen about how to rebalance. To me, the nodes, I really look at the nodes as rebalancing. Now, modern astrology has different ways of looking at the nodes, where we talk about moving towards our North Node or moving away from our South Node. Vedic and Eastern astrology thinks about that slightly differently, where we might be needing to increase, or we might be experiencing desire with the North Node, and we might be experiencing processing or letting go with the South Node. And both of those, the desire for increase and the processing of old habits, of old behaviors and beliefs, all of those things can bring us back into an equilibrium. So we're really getting an equilibrium and a balance in lessons of pride with the South Node in Leo, with increasing our ability to become objective with the North Node in Aquarius, of being able to see things from maybe a higher 30,000 foot viewpoint rather than just from what's right in front of our face in the moment, to be able to think future orientatedly, to be able to understand that our actions do affect other people rather than just us as individuals. So all of these things could be supported for rebalancing. And when Uranus stations retrograde, we may be really thinking about how our communication styles fit into that larger narrative. I've been witnessing a lot of really challenging communications on the internet. The internet is well, first of all, so many voices at once, so many perspectives, so much mercurial energy, right? Or we're seeing all of these different opinions in real time, and we can instantly, without thinking about it or seeing someone's face, we can just press a button and shoot off the most passionate hot take that we have without really even having to experience immediately the repercussions of that. When we meet people face to face and communicate, we may immediately see the effect that our words have written on their face, with their disappointment, with their anger, with their happiness, with their joy. We don't get that when we communicate on the internet. And that can lead to much more severe communication because it doesn't have that nuance. And when we have that severe communication, it can lead to division a lot quicker, in my opinion and in my observation. So Uranus is maybe shaking us out of patterns and habitual patterns of communication. It's also creating a lot of attempted innovation in technology circles. We have had a lot of people in the tech industry trying to further and become more godlike. This is something I learned from Liz Green in The Art of Stealing Fire. The desire to become more godlike, where we're stealing some kind of thing from the gods and giving it to humanity. In this case, information and computing speed and superhuman intelligence or something of that nature. And we have a lot of pushback on that as well, because a lot of times when Uranus is involved in a conversation, we may not be thinking of the ramifications of becoming godlike. There are challenges to that. There is a reason why in a lot of the Greek myths, individuals were punished for the hubris of trying to become godlike as humans. And the hubris that we see right now in our technological sphere is in the effort to become superhuman, to enhance our ability to think quicker, we may actually be doing the opposite. We may be atrophying our ability to think critically. We may be atrophying and destroying life in the process, right? So this is something that will be up for a lot of reconsideration. And this is an important issue to me personally, because I live in the state of Michigan in the United States, and this is a state that has really bought into the data center type of boom, the AI boom. And there's a new data center that is proposed in almost every community. I'm not really exaggerating. This is not hyperbole. That I could think of a list of 20 right off the top of my head, and it's something that the people are really pushing back on, and rightfully so, because a lot of these things are moving very quickly without understanding the environmental impact and the impact on just our humanity. So reviewing Uranian Gemini qualities, September 10th. Again, that date, that's a big date, isn't it? Uranus stationing retrograde, Venus going into Scorpio, Mercury moving into Libra, a new moon, lots of things happening on the 10th. On the 14th, Mercury will emerge as the evening star at 7 degrees of Libra. So that first 10-degree section of Libra helps us to become aware of imbalances. We may even be idealistic about what could bring balance or peace to a situation, but we may be noticing where we're experiencing an imbalance. And that's the first step to restoring peace and justice. We might have to get angry a little bit. There is a spirit in that deck called the Uranes, who were these monsters, these monstrous kind of deities that people would pray to punish someone that was had gotten away with a crime. Now, we've been talking a lot about restorative versus punitive justice in this talk. So maybe there are certain circumstances where that could be appropriate, but there might be quite a bit more where that might not be appropriate. So we have to think about those feelings, and how do we deal with those feelings? That righteous indignation. How do we deal with that in constructive ways? Not to repress it, and not to sidestep it. A lot of times the feelings, the anger, the rage, the indignation is coming from a place of not getting a need met, of an imbalance. So we don't want to just sweep it aside, because that doesn't get anyone's needs met. We want to acknowledge it. And that's going to help us to figure out the actions that we can take to bring about what we need. All right, so those are our solar phases. Okay. All right. Oh, take care, Javiera. Okay. So let's talk about out-of-bounds planets and enclosures. So an out-of-bounds planet is one where we are experiencing the planet moving outside of the normal declination path of the sun. We have basically an imaginary line across the horizon if we're looking to the south in the northern hemisphere. And the sun will move across that line over the course of 24 hours. It will peak at the top of that line, okay? And it will raise at different levels at different points in the year. Now we're getting close to the fall equinox. It's going to be rising right on the ecliptic, okay? When we have the summer solstice, it rises the furthest, okay, south of the ecliptic at the highest point. And in the winter solstice, it rises at its lowest point in relationship to that imaginary line across the horizon. Now, when planets go outside of the normal path that the sun is making throughout an entire year, above or below that imaginary line, they're said to be out of bounds. So these are planets at what is called extreme declinations. And when a planet's in an extreme declination, it goes to extremes. It may be acting in ways that are not normally socially acceptable for that planet. They may be acting as a concentration of that energy. Now, we've talked about Pluto out of bounds. So Pluto energy is going to be concentrated and extreme. But in this case, it's instead of consolidating power towards autocracy, right? We are consolidating power and maybe going to extremes for reform because of the southern declination. So you may see extreme actions taken in service of reform and rebalancing a power structure that has gotten out of whack. Pluto's going to be out of bounds from August the 11th until December the 10th, from 3 degrees of Aquarius retrograde all the way to 3 degrees of Aquarius direct. So we have a really slow moving Pluto that is just stationing in the middle of that out of bounds, concentrating that energy. The moon will be out of bounds from September the 2nd to September the 7th when we have lunar out of bounds phases. Sometimes our emotions are more intense. Maybe our bodies are pushed to their limits. The moon can also represent our physical nature's embodiment. We might be having extreme memories. We might be having extreme physical desires around that period of time. We also might just be feeling extra tired and maybe a little bit extra emotional. So the 2nd to the 7th, the moon also goes out of bounds from September the 15th to September the 21st. And then we have a solar malefic enclosure. The sun in malefic enclosure from the 27th of September to the 4th of October, from 5 degrees of Libra to 11 degrees of Libra. It will begin with Mars moving into Leo. And I will show you this when we get to the end of the month. I'll show you on the chart itself. But a malefic enclosure is when the planets that are considered malefic, Mars and Saturn, are making aspects to a planet and kind of putting its back against the wall. Like when one planet, Mars or Saturn, is on one side of the planet and the other is on the other side, and closing it in. And that can manifest as feeling like we can't necessarily utilize the energy of that planet without conditions, without I don't know, compromises, I guess you could say. We might be feeling pressure from those malefic planets. So Mars in Leo is probably putting pressure on us to perform, to take on a new role, and that may be making it difficult to find a balance in our life with the Sun in Libra. Saturn in Aries is putting pressure on the Sun in Libra to be able to be true to our personal values. That could be putting pressure on our ability to compromise with others. So the Sun in Libra is trying to find equitable solutions, but our need to perform, the pressure to take on a new role, and a need to be bound to certain values that we have could be making it difficult from the 27th of September to October 4th. The moon will go out of bounds then again one final time at the end of the month from September the 30th to October the 4th again. So we get some relief around that October the 4th date from some of these challenging energies. Okay. Do me a huge favor, friends. If you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to take a little stretch here before we start diving in. We're going to talk about the Virgo decans, and then what we're going to do is we are going to take you through the weekly aspects throughout the entire month. And we're going to do it in decanic sections, 10-degree sections of the zodiac, because when the sun is moving through a specific decan, it is highlighting something that we might all be feeling, that we might all be aspiring towards, because sometimes the sun can show us collective aspirations as well. And they may be happening in different parts of our charts and different topics in our life, but the theme of it is going to be a thread that weaves throughout the entire quilt of our existence. Okay. Let's start with Virgo 1. We have only a couple days in the beginning of the month in Virgo 1. But we're going to just at least start so you can see how the narrative unfolds in Virgo. Now, Virgo is a Mercury-ruled sign. It is the yin domicile or home of Mercury. It is Hermes in its psychopomp phase as well. Psychopomp is a fancy word for guide of souls to the underworld or guide of souls to the land of the dead. So a lot of times we're going internal, right? We are trying to figure out, we're exploring an internal landscape with Virgo oftentimes. We are trying to bring something into matter, right? So you could see the first decan of Virgo, we see an apprentice who is working very hard on their craft. This is a decan. Oftentimes the first decan will show us what we lack. This person is probably having an awareness with the sun moving through Virgo 1 of skills needed to bring an idea or a dream into physical manifestation. All right. Austin Cobbett calls it a tree bearing fruit in 36 faces. We have the book T in the Book of Thoth called the Lord of Prudence. All right. Prudence being one of the cardinal virtues. All right. So the daimon in spirit in this decan is Themis, who was a deity that was, I believe, a teacher of divine law. But also I think that there is a connection with the voice of the oracle as well, receiving the messages of Apollo. When we talk about Themis as teacher of divine law, though, that's important, I think, for this decan in particular, because what we're dealing with is understanding the rules of incarnation. Oftentimes we have a dream, and the physical reality, time, material, abilities become limiting factors, okay? Anybody who has gone through having a dream and trying to turn it into a reality has dealt with the need to work with time, the need to work with materials, the need to work with other people and their wills versus our own personal will. So all of these things become aware to us when the sun's moving through the first decan. And when we become aware of what potentially what we might be lacking to bring those things into existence, that can also help us to become aware of what we need to bring it into existence. So just a personal anecdote, I have Jupiter in this decan. So this is something that I feel very strongly in a Jupiterian way. Like when I do my live streams, here's an example of this. I don't enjoy just telling people this is how it's going to be. I enjoy teaching people the laws of astrology, the laws of how it works, right? The mechanisms of how it works, so that someone can take that information and apply it to their life in real time without necessarily becoming just dependent on your local friendly astrologer to be able to parse all these things out. While I do want you to come back to the channel, I would love for you to be able to utilize these skills and these techniques in real time, even if I'm not there. Like, yes, you have Spencer in your pocket a little bit, but you might not always be able to like ask me a question or something like that. And if we're learning the techniques, we are helping people towards independence. And I think that's part of the Virgo journey too, is how do we become functional? How do we become independent and functional through learning the rules of incarnation? So this is only the first few days of the month, but I do think it's important because we do have this very important set of aspects in the first couple days. Now, just a reminder, well, before I move off of Virgo 1, we do have some important fixed stars here too, Regulus and Thuban. Regulus being a fixed star associated with eminence. And the sun is going to conjoin the south node very close to the fixed star Regulus at the end of August, before we see everything kind of moving into Virgo. So we may experience a draining of eminence. We've seen this in various institutions recently, and with various leaders and teachers experiencing sort of a challenge to their eminence. And what do we do after that, though? After we experience that awareness that, hey, maybe we aren't where we thought we were, what do we do? Do we get to work? Do we get to work learning something new? Do we get to work communicating with others and trying to do restorative justice and things of that nature? Or do we double down on pride and make something 10 times worse than it would have been had we just sat with it, mourned it? I think this is an interesting concept that I'm still in the process of learning. Instead of just doing an apology, we go deeper and we mourn our actions and feel genuine remorse for that, and genuine mourning for either the hurt that was caused or mourning for the feelings of inadequacy that we might feel around that, and then utilize that energy to start building something back up again in hopefully a more positive fashion. So how do we, at the beginning of the month, accept the fact that there may be some situation in our life where we have to step down off of a throne or step down off of something that we were defending? Find the humility. This is the humility, the transition between between Leo and Virgo. You can even see it in the strength card in tarot. You have the Lion of Leo, and you have the I don't know, I guess the Virgin of the Lion of Leo and the Virgin of Virgo. Sorry, I'm trying to look for this card. That's why my brain is glitching here. Of course, it's at the back of the deck, as it always is when I need a tarot card. Here it is. So here is the strength card, and you can see the goddess. Maybe it's Estrella. Estrella is a version of the goddess in the constellation of Virgo, attempting to bring a little bit of grace to the instinctual nature of Leo, right? Trying to maybe learn some humility in that moment where we are tempering our instinctual passions and making them able to, I don't know if it's to fit in, but to be able to utilize them in ways that aren't harming others, I guess would be another thing to think about. So where in your life do you need to step away from a long cherished belief, or step down off of a place that you're defending out of maybe habit, maybe out of pride, and then learn the new skills moving forward. That's the beginning of September to me. Now, again, we talked about Pluto out of bounds. So I feel like we covered that pretty well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the chart up to the screen so you can kind of see what I'm looking at. All right, one moment. Here we go. And here we're starting on September the 1st. Okay, Pluto here at 3 degrees is retrograde and out of bounds. Again, we've talked about this at length in other broadcasts, but the basic gist of Pluto out of bounds in the southern declination: revolution, reform, power being redistributed to the masses versus consolidated in an authoritarian leader, like a singular leadership. So keep your eyes peeled for those types of themes playing out between now and 2035, but also especially between now and the middle of December. The cool thing about this, and I would love to talk about this more if people have some thoughts about it, but Pluto isn't going to go out of bounds again after this 10-year period for another 3,000 years, which to me is really potentially very exciting. Because if we think about the Pluto going out of bounds as concentration of extremes in power structure dynamics, maybe we will have created a society by that time that is equitable enough that we don't have to resort to violence, either from leadership or from the masses and revolutionary impulses, to be able to relate to one another. To me, as a Pluto and Libra generation, that's really exciting. We'll see. Maybe it's idealistic. 10 years is kind of a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of short. So I would love to be able to live into those answers. But that is something that is the very large canvas that everything in the month is being painted on. So if you can see all of these events in the context of restoring power to the masses and redistributing power through reform and revolution, I think that you'll understand the aspects a lot better. All right, so we start off the month with that Mars-Saturn square I was referencing. So here's Mars, here's Saturn, and there's a square between them. We also have Mercury making a sextile to Mars. So this is something that is trying to intercede and interject in between this conflict. It's trying to support. All right, so let's go into detail with this. Mars is at 13 degrees of Cancer. The second 10-degree section of Cancer is related to the tarot card, the Three of Cups. It is a decan that was given the name The Walled Garden by Austin Coppock in 36 Faces. It is a Mercury-ruled decan, so there is some themes of communication, communicating from an emotional space to maybe smooth out our emotional connections with one another. There is also themes related to protecting something that we want to nurture into its fullest form. Now, Mars moving through this very sacred space, this what is supposed to be a safe and protected space, can be very disruptive. Mars in this decan can feel like the wolf has gotten into the sheep's pen, right? That there is something that is threatening what would normally be a soft, supportive space. So that's our kind of foundation for this. Saturn, second decan of Aries. That is a decan associated with Three of Wands. In that decan, we see someone that is watching their ships go off into harbor or watching the ships come in. There is that is a solar decan. So each 10-degree section is ruled by an individual planet. Even if we have like the Saturn in Aries is in the house of Mars, but let's say this is a room in the house, and that room is specifically decorated by the sun in this case. So we have a sign that's associated with severing and separating, martial, yang, Aries energy. We have a room in that house that is associated with declaring our values, of shining our own personal subjective perspective and saying, this is my royal decree. We spent the first decan of Aries saying, this is what I am not. I reject this part of the collective to individuate. With Saturn here, we may be trying to craft a world or laws or structures based on very individualistic perspectives. When that happens, it becomes very toxic because it very much depends on the personal character who is in charge, I guess you could say. And if the quality of the person's character that's in charge is low or very self-centered, the laws that become created become very draconian and very authoritarian. So that's part of the thing that we're dealing with Saturn in the second decan of Aries, is sometimes we feel trapped within someone else's world that they're creating, their royal decrees. Now, there is an interesting factor with this, with Saturn being retrograde in a fallen sign, dignified wise, where it could be acting as its opposite. In that case, Saturn in Libra 2 may be associated with seeing things from someone else's perspective, negotiating with other people. So to me, this is a need to negotiate, also through understanding our own needs and desires and our own value system, to be able to recreate our own worlds in a way that helps us to weed out or eliminate any challenges in the safe spaces that we have, or in the spaces severing connections that could threaten the continuity of either a domestic sphere, a group of people, or that could threaten the ability to bring something to full form or fruition. I would also say that when Mars is in Cancer, people start reverting more towards tribalism, okay, where they say, I am a part of this group and you are not a part of this group, and now we're going to have a conflict because we are not part of the same group. I would also say that in the positive side, Mars in Cancer can also be very a defender of the innocent, or a defender of children, or defender of the family. So there could also be conflicts where people feel that their particular group or family or children are threatened, and they are coming to the aid of that person or those people. Saturn's in the overcoming position. So Saturn is putting a lot of pressure on Mars in this arrangement. Now, what is Mercury doing here? What is Mercury doing? Karen's joining us. What's up, Karen? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going your way. We're talking about the square that starts off the month between Mars and Saturn. I would also say, before I move to the Mercury part, the Mars-Saturn square is, I've always experienced it like a feeling like you want to put the foot on the gas. Mars wants to move forward, but Saturn has its foot on the brake, and you're trying to drive with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake simultaneously. And often what happens is you just really get stuck. You're really just not going anywhere, right? Or if you are, it's like you're really grinding to get there, and you're grinding your gears to get there. So this might be the feeling of like, we want to move forward, but we're being asked to slow down. Mercury is going to be helping to facilitate with a sextile to Mars, maybe our ability to learn new ways to weave our dreams into physical reality can help to alleviate some of these tensions. Again, this is a really important time for learning new skills and for appreciating the limitations of time and space and physicality. One of the things that I think is a real gift that Virgo has is not only can they identify flaws or roadblocks to getting something done or getting something incarnated They can also identify value, right? They could say, this is valuable. I'm sorting out what is valuable from what is invaluable. People who have strong Virgo placements are really good at doing this with information. Like if the Gemini archetype is very good at gathering information, Virgo is very good at sorting the information, or Mercury in the Virgo guise is very good at sorting that out and saying, this is important, this needs to go, this isn't applicable to this situation. They're getting right down to brass tacks. So how do you sort through information during this time? That might help alleviate some of the tension between the square. How do you become discriminating in the best sense of the word, of saying what is useful for this particular conflict or movement forward or perspective or situation, and what is actually just a distraction? That can be really powerful. Okay, so that is the first decan of Virgo part of it. The moon's also going to be out of bounds on the 2nd. We start off the month with a Taurus moon, an exalted moon, which is nice. It's going to be making a trine to the sun and Mercury too. So there is some positive qualities with the moon and its relationship to the sun and Mercury. The out of bounds moon is happening from the 2nd to the 7th. So that's going to start off our month as well. Then we move to Virgo 2. Okay. Welcoming some more friends here. Taku is here. Hello, Spencer. Happy Friday. Missed the first part, but happy to join now. I'm glad that you're here, friend. We've just been talking about Virgo 1 a little bit, but we're about to dive into the 2nd decan of Virgo. So let's bring back our decan flashcards, which you can find when you sign up for my decan walk. This is part of the material that we utilize in class. There will be, I'm pretty sure we're going to have another session of decan walk starting in October. So if that's something that you're interested in, reach out and I'll help get you connected with that information. Still in the process of organizing all of my fall offerings, so I just ask for your patience with that. But there will probably be some things launched in the beginning of September. Virgo 2. Virgo 2, we see the 9 of Pentacles associated here. Here's our visual reference that is syncretized with the tarot, the Rider-Waite Tarot in this case. We see a woman of affluence and means in a garden. There's grapevines behind her. She's holding a hooded falcon, right? She is enjoying the splendor of her garden, but also there is a little snail in the bottom corner. You can see that here. Here's a little snail right here. All right. So sometimes this decan can speak of weeding out inefficiencies. All right. It can also talk about snail energy. Maybe we need to slow down and really examine things with a magnifying glass up close. The 36 Faces calls it the hammer and anvil, which is a reference to Hephaestus, a consort of Venus or Aphrodite. This is a Venus-ruled decan. Now, Venus is in her fall, so this is a challenging place for Venus. Venus likes to bring things together. This mercurial energy is separating things out into categories, so that's an awkward match. But I will say this decan shows a love for the details, a love for the examination of things up close, a love for the work behind the scenes to enclose something into matter. The daimon or spirit in this decan is the moirai, the weavers of fate. So how do we weave a dream or a vision into reality, right? How do we bring it from just an idea and make it real? Sometimes what we have to do is eliminate the obstacles and eliminate the things that would threaten something that would be manifested. So that's part of the falconer energy with this. My beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, has the part of spirit in this decan. And I see her being in her happy place when she's making stuff, when she's in her little office, like making oils, making ritual displays and altar spaces and gathering materials to make something. She's a maker, right? And that part of spirit can show a area of life where we might just feel really in touch with what we're here to do, with what we are consciously striving towards. So how can we get in touch with the maker in ourselves during the Virgo 2 period, which is the 2nd of September to the 12th? Okay, let's go back to the chart. Now we see, let's get rid of that. We start off Virgo 2 with the last quarter moon. So let's go to the 4th. So here is the last quarter moon, the square between the Virgo sun and the Gemini moon. Okay. Now this is a period of time where we might want to remove some distractions. Now, Gemini doesn't always mean we are going to be distracted. It just means that our attention is split in many different directions, many different tributaries of exploration. We're visiting many flowers as the bee. Sometimes we have to stop visiting flowers and take the pollen back to the hive. This is part of the tension between Gemini and Virgo. How do we start to take that information that we've been gathering and do something with it? How do we make choices and start eliminating some of the possibilities to make something real? Recently, I've been on a little bit of a personal project to eliminate some of the distractions in my life. I identified a value and a need that I had, which was to learn more skills and materials. And I was identifying in Virgo fashion. I have 3 planets in Virgo. It's hard being me sometimes with the Jupiter in Virgo, Saturn and Mars in Virgo. I'm constantly aware of the flaws in my systems. And one of the flaws in my systems was my attention was being captured by my phone. And this is something that's common in modern society. We have phones and algorithms that are specifically designed to keep us on those platforms to sell advertising. And they do lots of different things to keep us there. They rage farm, they rage bait, they tap into our deepest desires. They collect information and data on us to be able to advertise things that they think we would want based on our habits. It is very nefarious. There's also things that we do to escape from our realities, and those can be distractions. This is something that I'm susceptible to sometimes. As a sensitive person, there's times when I just feel like the world is too much, and I want to go to a land of enchantment. And I've done that in the past through just various little games on my phone. And I go through a cycle every 2 years or so where I get really into a particular game. And then at the end of that, like 2 to 2.5 year cycle, I'm like, this is a waste of my time. This has become a job rather than something fun. And every time I come to that realization, I'm like, this has to go. And that happened in the past week. I had something that I was doing on my phone. It was a little game that became a job. And I said, what do I want to create? I want to create space so that I can think my own thoughts and I can read my vast library of books. That was my main motivation, as I was realizing I was dumping more time or just any time into this job that wasn't giving, the payoff wasn't very good. It started off as a dopamine hit and it became like an addict. Like when you're pushing the button, it's like a slot machine. You know, these games are just glorified slot machines these days. And how do you break that cycle of addiction to free up space to do the things that are important to you? In the week that I've deleted that game, I've read probably about 200 pages in various books. I've read at least 150 pages in another version of nonviolent communication that is dealing with social issues, which is important to me. I've read the first few chapters of Baron and Luthien, which is the next Tolkien thing I've been doing. I've been reading a book called Pronoia by Rob Bresney. I've reclaimed some of my time and attention. And I can't tell you, friends, how amazing it feels to reclaim your time and attention from the tech oligarchs and from these like really exploitive algorithmic things. So how do you make it joyful? How do you understand that when you are eliminating something, it is in service of something higher, a service of something that you really would enjoy doing in your life, right? And this is the other thing that I think is so important. I am allowing myself to be bored. This is something we haven't connected with in a long time since our smartphones got smarter, quote unquote. And I tell you, I witnessed this in all the people in my life that I've come across. A lot of people. I witnessed it in my partner and myself and my family, my friends. It's so difficult to sit with silence these days. We have to have a podcast going. We have to have music going. We need to be doing some little thing. We can't just sit with silence, because when we sit with silence, we have to face ourselves. And sometimes those voices that we have going on internally, they're guilt producing, they're shame producing. And a lot of these voices are ones that we inherit from an exploitative system, because a lot of our early education was trying to make us good soldiers in capitalism, to do what authority says and to not question it. And when we are trained to not question authority, we start to repress the voices that say, this is what I need. This is what I need to feel good, right? And then when we have in the background those guilt and shame voices saying, oh my God, you're not getting these needs met. I feel really depressed about this. I need a stimulation of dopamine, whether it's through food, whether it's through something sexual, or something through like a game, or like it's doom scrolling. All of these things are just dopamine hits, right? How do you reclaim that? Through boredom. When you create space and face your feelings and emotions, it's amazing that the ideas that you can come up with, and you can break out of those ruts that you might find yourself in. This last quarter moon is a really good opportunity to eliminate some of those things that are stealing or trying to steal your attention. It feels really good, friends. It feels really liberating. It feels like you're re-engaging with a divine purpose, and I can't recommend it enough. Okay, so that's the last quarter moon. All right, weeding out ideas, thoughts, distractions, options, so that we can bring something important into manifestation. Now that's going to allow us to skip ahead a few days and go to the 9th. All right, we have the moon moving through Cancer on the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. It's going to meet up with Mars, so you have a Moon-Mars conjunction. Maybe after we've eliminated some of these distractions, we might be starting to deal with some of the feelings that we have been avoiding through, escapism. And that might bring up some challenging feelings in between this time period when we get to the 9th, when Venus will then trine the North Node. So we talk about Venus squaring the nodes as a turning point, where we are able to move towards either an increase or decrease. This is a point where that work that we did when Venus was squared the nodes, maybe we start to feel in harmony with what we are moving towards, or with what is increasing in our life. And Venus moving through Libra 3, we might be feeling like we are starting to come into alignment with the ability to center ourselves internally, so that we can bring that energy to our external environments. That's one of the key issues in in Libra 3, is how do we create an eye in the storm and make an internal peacefulness that can help bring us peace to our external environments. Now, that is in harmony with our ability to become objective with the North Node in Aquarius, and our desire potentially to unravel old karmic knots, which is another signification of Aquarius 3, revisit maybe some painful things, but to unravel the knots so we can move forward into the unknown, so we can make a crossing into our new realities, whatever that may be. So becoming peaceful internally, to unravel old karmic knots, and to be able to increase your objectivity and be able to leave something behind, to know when to step down, know when to quit type of thing. Those are supported when we get to the 9th. Now, this is important because we're going to need this energy as we move into the 10th. Remember, we talked about the 10th as being a pretty supercharged day. So here is the 10th. Let's just go straight to the new moon here. So we changed the orientation here. Here's the new moon in Virgo. Venus will have moved into Scorpio. Mercury will have moved into Libra. Venus will make an opposition to Chiron that day if you use asteroids. So that could give us additional information. And Uranus will station retrograde. So all of this is in context of this new moon in Virgo. So what elements do we have changing that day? Well, Venus is going to move into its exile. Scorpio is a Mars stewarded domicile. It's a temple of Mars. It is a place where we would normally be going through the process of letting go, grieving, severing a body from a spirit, and returning something to the earth. It is slightly awkward for Venus, who wants to hold things together or harmonize things. It is also a little bit awkward because oftentimes Mars-ruled places will try to pursue something rather than letting it come to them. Here we could be desiring something with Venus in the first degrees of Scorpio that is not able to be met. Okay? So one of the first challenges of Venus moving through Scorpio, first of all, what we have to do is we have to make the connection to its host. So here is Venus, the 0 degrees of Scorpio. And this is going to be where we are going to experience the Venus cazimi. So really important to pay attention to what's going on here. And it's hosted by Mars, that is going to be moving into the 3rd decan of Cancer. Okay. So what desires do we have? Mars can teach us that. Well, Mars is saying we might not be getting our needs met because we desire luxury, right? We may have tastes that are a little bit more expensive than we can get met. There may be a surplus that we desire, something that we don't actually need, but we want. But Mars says, you're severing that, right? It's saying, no, this is not going to be, you might not be able to get this need met. And with Venus in the 1st decan of Scorpio, we may be mourning that. We may be saying, I'm really sad that I can't get this need met. Now, Mercury moving into Libra may be bringing us an awareness of how unfair that is, that some people get to experience luxury while other people have to experience scarcity, right? So a lot of our thoughts could be like, that's not fair. Like that. One of the quotes I wrote down in my notes, I have, these are the types of notes that I have. I do like 5 pages of this for every monthly. And mostly it's so I can remember things and really kind of internalize. It's like practicing an instrument when I write all these things down by hand. The quote I wrote down was, comparison is the thief of joy, which has been attributed to various people, but Theodore Roosevelt was one of the people that it was attributed to. So how do we, when we compare ourselves and what we have to other people, whether it's skills, whether it's resources, that starts to consume the joy that we have from what we do have. So I think that one of the things that the main lessons when we're experiencing planet moving through the first 10-degree section of Scorpio, it's shown to us in the card, the 5 of Cups. The 5 of Cups teaches us, I'll show you here. Let's bring it to the screen. Here is the, oh no, I didn't put that one up. Never mind. I'll just show you the actual card. We see a figure who is in a black cloak that is mourning 3 spilled cups. All right. There it is. And what we don't always immediately notice is there's 2 standing cups behind. And if this figure would turn direction and find gratitude for the cups that still remain, they may find a pathway or a bridge you can see in the background over this river that is creating this maybe artificial boundary, I guess you could say. Now, there are a number of things with this decan that I think are important. Not only should we find gratitude for what we do have and what remains in our life, but we do need to actually mourn the things that we don't get or that we haven't done, or that we, this is something that has really been very pivotal in my experience of beginning to study nonviolent communication. Oftentimes we learn through punishment in this society, and it causes us to feel shame and to feel guilt. And then we make apologies that come from shame and guilt, which perpetuates a cycle of violence. If we could have actual empathy for the things that we have done that cause hurt for others, we would be able to mourn with someone rather than eviscerate. I'm reminded of the story of Ereshkigal in the Sumerian myth of Inanna, right? Ereshkigal was going through a birth, and Inanna came through the gates, the 7 gates of hell, basically, to be there with Ereshkigal, her sister. And instead of trying to heal the labor pains, she just had to sit there with empathy and had to witness it and mourn with her. That was the way that she was released back into the world, was just through empathy, through mourning that pain with someone. And this might be something where, how do we mourn the losses in our life? How do we mourn our what might be considered a failure in another term or language? How do we mourn not being able to meet the needs of others as well? How do we mourn not being able to bridge an idealistic divide that we have with somebody through our behavior or lack of skills through that? And through that mourning, you can find a lot of empathy for each other. Even for people who have hurt us, we can find a lot of empathy in that as well. So a couple themes with that. Not being able to get a need met, potentially because it might be outside of our affordability, or it just might be a luxury that we don't need. The pain of comparison with other people, or maybe people that have more than us, or even just the pain of comparison with people that have less as well. And what does that inspire? What are you inspired towards if you realize that you have an excess, whether it's an excess of resources or an excess of power, an excess of privilege? What does that bring up in you? And what do you do with that? And how do you start to, through that awareness, through that mercurial awareness in Libra, how do you start to take the action steps towards rebalancing that disharmony? I think that these are all really important themes that are going to be outlining this new moon in Virgo. So let's move to the new moon, because it's so pivotal. All of these things are moving on the same day. This is probably the biggest day of the month, in my opinion. So what are we doing on this new moon in Virgo? Well, we have a sextile to Mars. So Mars is in the conversation with this new moon. Generally, just regular new moons in this decan are about starting to weed out inefficiencies and bring dreams and ideas into physical reality by respecting the rules of incarnation. This particular new moon in Virgo is hosted by Mercury in Libra 1. So we may be aware of imbalances. We may be experiencing the newly ingressed Venus into Scorpio, an awareness of what we are lacking and grieving that. We may also be experiencing a lack of something, a need that we want to get met that is potentially based on surplus or scarcity. Okay. All of those things can lead to a desire to to engage in restorative justice. And I think that this, again, this is a concept that I'm just in the very beginning of learning and understanding. And it's something I think I really resonate with. How do we start to restore equilibrium and balance? Not through force or coercion or violence. Because when you try to restore balance through coercion, violence, shame, and guilt, you are perpetuating that cycle of domination and violence. And there are certain circumstances where we have to use protective force. I understand that. But I think that there's many more situations where when we coerce someone to doing something because they want to avoid punishment, they're not learning anything. They're not doing it from a place, from a divinely inspired place. They're doing it out of a place of fear, right? And when we act out of a place of fear, we're just perpetuating and adding to the fear cycle. How do we encourage people through, hopefully, our nonviolent communication and restorative justice to act out of compassion and empathy for trying to make our lives and everyone's life better, right? And some of you I know may argue, well, some people aren't capable of doing that. Maybe not. But I think many more of us are, if we are able to acknowledge what everyone's needs are in a situation. So these are mediation techniques. And again, something that I personally am very invested in as far as becoming a bridge to this restorative justice type of energy. Let's see. Kate says, this one of the cards that reminds me of saying, I've gone so long with so little, I can do almost anything with nothing. Right? With the Mars in Cancer? Is that what you're experiencing? With the kind of not getting the needs met, right? Or potentially the Five of Cups, right? Yeah, I think that's also another one where we could have that. Kate says, to hold the losses, they aren't easy. Can't dismiss them, while also acknowledging that they shape you, how you resource in life in various ways. But the well, by all means, is empty, yet we find a way to carry on. Yeah. How do we keep on going, even if we aren't well resourced? I mean, these are questions that a lot of us are having to answer right now, isn't it? And, but hopefully there's ways to restore equilibrium and balance. And I think that the Pluto in southern declination out of bounds does give me a little bit of hope that there will be reforms that are made. We were already seeing this in some government institutions and reforms, and in local spaces, like in the astrological community. There's been some reform actions that have been taken because of hurt caused by the way people are communicating and by uneven power dynamics and structures. So there are reforms that are happening right now already. But how do we participate in that in ways that are restorative and that can break the generational curse, I guess you could say, of violence and of perpetuating inequality and perpetuating hurt with one another? Okay, so that's the new moon in Virgo. I will do an entire live stream on that in the coming weeks. The Venus opposition with Chiron, part of that, we didn't really discuss that, but that is that lack could be in association with material resources. Sometimes we grieve not having enough in other areas of our life, but this one could be particularly related to our physical fundamental needs with the opposition with Chiron, a wound of maybe feeling like we're worried about physical resources. We also have Uranus stationing retrograde on that day, so maybe reevaluating our technology and things like that. We have a lot of pushback on the data centers. We just had a data center that was approved in my community in Ypsilanti Township. It's called Los Alamos, and it is a research facility for nuclear weapons that is funded by the University of Michigan, and it's right smack on the Huron River at a dam, the Huron River, and the township did not approve it. But the university is going forward with it anyway, despite a lot of pushback from the community. So how do we, I think that we're going to see a lot more pushback, I guess, is with these new technological advancements with Uranus stationing retrograde. I think that there will be a lot more questions that are raised when Uranus is stationing retrograde, because they've been trying to really fast track a lot of these things. And in a lot of communities, not just my own, but it is poignant for me because it's happening right in my backyard, all over the place. Okay, let's go to the 12th. On September the 12th, we have a couple of things happening with Mercury. Mercury is going to be making a trine with Pluto. So here's Mercury trining Pluto. It is also going to be making an opposition with Neptune. And we have the first aspect of the moon. So here is the moon at about 15-ish degrees. Is this the right about? So the first aspect of the moon is, I believe, an opposition. Whoop, that's not the one we want. Oh, it's gonna get rid of all of it. So we're gonna have an opposition with Saturn. Okay. This is poignant and important because, whoops, come on, circles. My tech doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. All right, so this is what we're looking at here, these three elements. The opposition of the moon with Saturn is the first aspect after the moon is released from the bond. That is a term in traditional astrology where when the moon is within 15 degrees of a conjunction or an opposition of the sun, I believe on either side, it is under the bond. It is sort of limited from manifesting. So when we're looking at when the moon start to become visible at the crescent moon, it's the first contact it makes with a traditional planet can show us the type of experiences we might have from the seeds that we planted at the new moon, or from the experiences that were revealed at the full moon. In this case, the seeds that we are planting in the second decan of Virgo, associated with trying to bring something into manifestation, maybe something that is either beyond our reach due to scarcity, or because we're overindulging in something. We may be meeting with an opposition with our value system, maybe through someone else's feedback. Maybe we're trying to create a world that gets our own needs met, but we're getting some very valuable feedback that we need to start making negotiations, because maybe we understand that someone else's experience is different than ours, and we have to start to have a back and forth about that. That's sort of the first aspect of the moon, is the opposition to Saturn. It may also be felt as a no, right? Maybe we're trying to do something, and then we get some feedback that no, this isn't going to work for someone else in our life, right? Or what someone else is doing, we meet the no, and they say no. I think that we don't want to cooperate with that. So that might be a little bit frustrating in the days right after the new moon. Hey, what's up there, Rachel? Rachel Alone is here. Says hello and good tidings from Ireland. Hope everyone is doing well this Friday. Nice to see you, Rachel. It's been a little while. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Okay. So what about these Mercury aspects? We didn't really talk about that. We have Mercury in the first 10-degree section of Libra that is associated with an awareness and asking questions. Mercury loves to ask questions. Wherever Mercury is moving through, it's a good time to question that area of your life. We may be questioning imbalances in our life, questioning fairness. So we might be questioning fairness with social issues, with the relationship to Pluto. We might be questioning what is fair in regards to who isn't on the inside or the central position of power, and who is outside of that power, who is exiled from that. This is a lot of what Pluto is asking us to examine, is how do we distribute power structures, right? Who is on the inner circle and who is outside of it? So we might be seeing an injustice somewhere where people are being othered, right, with the Pluto in Aquarius 1. But this may be asking the right questions to start restoring balance and harmony and equilibrium. We might also be seeing our communication being a little bit confused by subjective perspective with the Neptune in Aries 1. We might also have the glamorization. Neptune is a planet that glamorizes, of violence, right? Of martial energy, of independence. And that might be coming into conflict with our desires to find balance and harmony and equilibrium and peace. So there might be peace negotiations that are running into some really difficult aspects with this. And maybe there's a peace negotiation breakdown with the moon making its first aspect in opposition to Saturn. So keep an eye out for that in your own personal life, but in the collective as well. Let's keep going. On the 13th, Mercury makes another aspect. So this is sort of the Mercury part of the month, I guess you could say. It's going to trine Uranus. Maybe there's a breakthrough. Maybe after we run into the first no, we go back to the negotiating table and we start to reevaluate our communication and our ideals. I can't recommend enough Marshall Rosenberg's work. I know it isn't perfect. There are some criticisms of it, but I'm finding it valuable in at least creating some space between my own subjective feelings and the feelings of others and the needs of others, and searching for the need in someone's communication, no matter how challenging that communication may be. And if we go to a negotiating table searching for the need in someone's expression, even if that expression is painful for us to hear, or if we get triggered by it, if we go in with the desire to hear what the need that is not being met through that person's anger, through their judgment, through their condemnation, it makes it a lot easier to help everybody get what they need in that circumstance. So that might be an opportunity to practice some of those techniques of listening without judgment, even if it's painful, and being able to go to a negotiation situation and innovate in the way that we communicate. Maybe not rushing to make a judgment of someone else, and allowing them to speak first could be another part of that too. Like, instead of saying, how do we get our needs met? How do we show up and say, how do we listen first? And then see how that meshes with whether our needs personal needs are getting met within that structure as well. Let's go to the 14th. On September the 14th, we're about halfway through the month. Let's take a little stretch break. Get a drink of water. Do me a favor. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Welcome if you're new. We do this generally once a week. Sometimes we'll take a break here and there. I've been kind of kicking around the idea of doing maybe the monthly, doing pre-recorded to streamline the process and maybe reclaim a little bit of time. These tend to go really long. I love having the conversations, and I would love to still hear your thoughts and communications and comments. But sometimes when we're doing this amount of astrology, it can extend the broadcast into unsustainable lengths where I start to run out of gas. So I may be thinking about doing this particular one pre-recorded. But we generally will go live. We're going to still do the new moon and the full moon as a conversation. And we might even have different lives and that are more focused on your questions. Sometimes what I've been feeling when I do my broadcasts is I have so many things that I want to talk about detail-wise that I'm not able to do both things. I'm not able to have the conversation in as much depth as I want and to be as present as I want for people in the chat. So maybe this would even free us up to be more present for each other by having some of the material pre-recorded and some of it just be more of a conversation. I'm not committed or to all of that yet, but I'd be curious to hear some of your thoughts on that. Yeah, Kate says, I think that would be good for you. I think it might be too. I think I have a lot of energy when we get to the 2 hour mark. When we start getting into the 3.5 hour mark, it's a slog. And it's probably a slog for my audience as well. So Taku says, yes, I think it'd be great if you do monthly pre-recorded and live Q&A for the month. Oh, okay. I like this feedback. Kate says, yes, would not blame you a bit. The new and full moons are more than enough. You are not a machine. I am not a machine. I try to be sometimes, but I am human. Kate says, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe you can still chat on pre-recorded episodes. You can, exactly. And we could even do the pre-recorded ones as like, there's like a debut feature where you could schedule it and then people can watch it live and comment on it live. So that might be another option too. Taco says it could help you grow your channel even more. Yeah, if I could do the monthly in 2.5 hours, I think that would really like. The other reason I'm thinking about doing this is I'm actually thinking of offering a class on Saturday, and generally when I do a 4-hour live stream, the next day I'm just wiped out. So I'm actually trying to open up some mental space to be able to teach another class the day after. So this is another reason that I'm thinking about doing this. Yeah, I love the conversation. So I'm hesitant to do it because I really enjoy the interaction. So that's a part of the thing that I'm thinking about. Karen says, happy Spencer, even better astrology. Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all being asked to step outside of our comfort zones a little bit and to maybe reevaluate our process, right? Yeah, Taku agrees. I am a person of habit. I am a creature of habit. I'm a Taurus moon on the midheaven. I value consistency. And what I also realize about myself is when I get into a new habit, it's really hard for me to get out of it. I feel a very, very strong desire to show up consistently for the people in my life, probably as a response to having a lot of chaos growing up and to have people that weren't as consistent in my life. And that is a trauma response on some level too. So as I start to heal some of that, recognizing that showing up consistently doesn't have to mean that I have to grind myself into bits to do so. It just means that there is some regular pattern that people can expect. Kate says, I think so too, Taku. Making the focus efficient will help our TikTok brains. There you go. All right. Well, with that in mind, let's keep going. I love these comments and I love the feedback. Thank you so much for the feedback on here. I do want to encourage discussion and commentary. So don't mistake me on that, but let's focus. We'll focus. We'll get through this. We'll do it. Let's see. Rachel says, I wonder if you would find it hard to benefit from streamlining in one. Say more about that. I'm not clear on that statement, Rachel. So, can you bring me more clarity on that? Taku says, I appreciate that you do these monthly previews around the middle of the previous month. It's super helpful. Oh, that's good feedback too. I want to be able to prepare us mentally so that we can utilize our pronoia, our foresight, so that we're not just in the middle of it when we're experiencing it. So thank you for that feedback. Says, wonder if you would find it hard to benefit from streamlining in one area because you might double down in another project. I only ask. Let's see. It's just coming in segments, Rachel. Because you seem so dedicated to putting your all into anything you do. I mean, I do. It's true. I am nervous about adding another project to my plate, but I'm feeling a strong need to try some new things and to try some new offerings. I need to expand my, I don't know. I need to bring in more income. If I'm being totally 100% transparent, I need to try some new things because I need to keep my business growing. Because right now, I'm not getting the needs met because our circumstances changed. My partner lost her job in December, and we were trying to build a new structure a new financial structure for our life, and that's requiring me to innovate and try new things to maybe bring some balance to the financial responsibility in our relationship. So if I'm being totally transparent, it's trying some new things so that I can pay our mortgage. Okay, yeah, love it. Could you put your effort into doing a little less? Diversify my portfolio. Yes. Okay, we're getting off track here again. It's my fault. Well, it's a collective effort. Like, Rachel says, thanks for clarifying. I just worry about all the Virgo dedication and how it impacts you or any of us. Rachel, one of the things that I'm interested in, and the reason I've been making some new time, is I am interested in storytelling, and I'm interested in mythology, and I am putting together a new offering for the fall that is connecting astrology and mythology, and it is a big project. So I need to free up some time and energy for that, and that's part of the reason why I'm considering the time investment that I'm doing with the YouTube channel. Even though I love the YouTube channel, I need to kind of free up some time to do that research because of my desire to be thorough with everything that I do. If I'm going to teach a class, I need to make sure that I am doing the very best possible job and that I'm connecting people in a way that is up to the standard that I've set for myself. So that is what you're hearing when I'm saying that. So I hope that that's clear, and that it's not a any indictment on the chat. I love chatting with all of you. Okay. Harness the little Tanya and little Sophie cram together and poof. There you go. Yes, that's right. Harness a little bit of the Tanya energy of infusing things into matter. Harness a little bit of my daughter's business sense, to be quite honest. She's a Capricorn. And then maybe we'll have something, right, Kate? Rachel says, sounds like an excellent use of your time and energy and time to review where it goes. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, friends, for the feedback. Appreciate that. This is why I like co-creating with all of you. Appreciate you as a community. Okay, let's refocus. So we were at the 14th. Sun sextile Mars. Mercury emerges as the evening star. All right, so this is another important day in our journey. So the sun here on the 14th is making a sextile at 22 degrees of Virgo with 22 degrees of Cancer Mars. Sun in Virgo 3 talks about an awareness of how to bring a material process to its completion. All right. That can mean returning something back to the earth. It can mean preserving something against the forces of entropy. It can mean passing something on as a legacy. Now, when we have the sextile with Mars, we might be trying to eliminate excess so that we can bring something to a completion. All right. We might be trying to increase something that is scarce, decrease something that is excessive, so that we can pass on the legacy that we want to pass on. This is part of that relationship. Okay, so we may have to cut something out to bring something to completion, I think is the energy on the 14th. Mercury emerging as the morning star at 7 degrees of Libra is interesting to me because it's fairly close to a fixed star called Diadem. There's a fixed star at 9 degrees of Libra called Diadem, and it is in a constellation called Coma Berenices, and that is a crown of hair. And in that story, Queen Berenices, and I believe this is an Egyptian Greek crossover story, all right, where the queen's husband went off to war, and Queen Berenices sacrificed some of her hair, which was a status symbol, okay, in ancient times, and maybe it still is in some circles, to Aphrodite for the safe return of her husband from war. Oftentimes, this fixed star will talk about the sacrifices we might need to make for someone else's well-being. So we may need to cut out some excesses, but we may also, those sacrifices may be in service of our family and things like that. Like I just kind of demonstrated that on some level. I've had a change in circumstance within my partner's financial situation, and I may have to be making some sacrifices of my time to be able to bring in restorative, balancing income to take pressure off of her, right? On some level, like that is part of the energy of diadem, right? So how do we do that? How do we start to restore balance and equilibrium? We might become aware of how things are unequal with this revelation of Mercury emerging as the evening star. I know for me, this is also a values discussion too, because a lot of the reason I sometimes struggle financially is I have a value system that is, I feel really down on the system that we are in, the system of exploitative capitalism. And it's been very difficult for me sometimes to engage in that process, sometimes to my own detriment. Like one of the things I've done in my life is I've kind of like stripped my life down to almost the bare minimum and essentials to maybe do less harm within in what I consider an exploitative system. Now, it works to a degree, but how do we continue to ask the right questions? Maybe how do we change the system so everybody can get their needs met? But how do we also work within the system that we are born into and do less harm, but also get our needs met? This might be a question that we're asking around this time as well. Kate says, this is the third deck in Virgo, you said? The third deck in Virgo is associated with the 10 of Pentacles. We'll break that down in a second. The diadem fixed star is at 9 degrees of Libra, which is the first decan of Libra. So a fixed star in a decan that is associated with awareness of imbalances, but that fixed star adds a dynamic of sacrifice for some kind of ideal or for the family. I've often seen people who have had to make enormous sacrifices of their personal desires to serve somebody in their family or to serve their community in some way with that fixed star. And with Mercury emerging within 2 degrees of it, I think that could be part of the themes, is we might become aware of sacrifices that we have to make to restore balance to an equilibrium. Okay, then 15th, let's go forward to the 15th. On the 15th, Venus makes a square to Pluto and Neptune sextiles Pluto. So here we have this kind of little arrangement here. Neptune, Pluto, and Venus. Okay. All right. Let's start with the Venus-Pluto square. The Venus-Pluto square is highlighting the 5 of Cups Scorpio 1 decan that we spent some time talking about with the 5 of Cups. The grieving process of not being able to get a hunger or a desire met. When that planet, Venus, is squaring off with Pluto, it brings into the equation a social element, a larger big picture element. This could be a famine, right? This could be where we are experiencing hunger or needs not being met on a larger scale. One of the things that I've been noticing recently is we have a food safety problem in America right now. We have seen the increase in illness associated with different foods, especially lettuce from Taylor Farms, who is a big corporate conglomerate that has different subsidiaries, some of which are products that claim to be organic and things of that nature. Do your research on all of the different tentacles that Taylor Farms provides for. Earthbound Farms or something is another one. There's a bunch of them. I can't rattle them off the top of my head, but we have eliminated some of the safety protocol organizations that are in charge of holding big corporate entities accountable And that has led to an increase in foodborne illness because of deregulation. And that is my assessment of that. And this could also be leading to more of that type of experiences. Because a lot of people are afraid to go to the store, there might be experiences of hunger. I know in my family, we're not buying lettuce at the store anymore. Like either we are growing it ourselves or we're not having it. I'm really missing peaches right now. I'm not super thrilled about trying store-bought peaches. This is a fruit that I really enjoy. I'm feeling the hunger for it, but we are buying them and cooking them. But it's different. It's different than having a cooked peach and then having a peach that you just bite into that's just raw and juicy and wriggling, if you want to bring column into it. Hopefully it's not wriggling. Then you got another problem. But there could be something that we desire that we can't have because of larger scale corruption. And I think that that's part of the conversation that we're having with Venus squaring Pluto. An uneven power dynamic within relationships, but also within getting a hunger met, right? And maybe grieving that on a larger scale. I think there is grief that is coming through not getting a hunger or a desire met with the square with Pluto. Now with Neptune and Pluto coming together, that's part of that Barbeau's basket arrangement that people have been talking about. I think that this is, if we think of the two elements separately, we have Neptune glamorizing violence, domination, dominion, colonization in that decan or themes around that, individuation, isolation. And then we have Pluto bringing up corruption around othering, corruption around casting people into exile or making people a scapegoat. I think there's a lot of scapegoating in that decan. We've seen a lot of the news I've been reading this week have been around immigration tactics in America and how unjust and how destructive our immigration practices have been, and the violence and sadness and death that has caused. So again, this could be another aspect of that as well. But that I think is bringing in a lot of that Pluto in Aquarius 1 energy. So that might be a difficult point in the month where we're experiencing some grief and we're mourning a hunger that is not being met. And we may be glamorizing violence or glamorizing individual effort in response to it. All right. I don't usually talk about Chiron a lot on the channel, but I thought that there was some interesting things happening with this that could merit an exploration. So here is the 17th of September. Chiron moves back into Aries 3. And we're going to have some oppositions with this Chiron in Aries. Chiron was moving through Taurus 1, which was bringing... Chiron is an asteroid that has been associated with the wounded healer of the centaur Chiron, who was a teacher, a musician, but he took he took like an arrow to the knee or to the shin or the ankle or foot or something like that, like one of Hercules' arrows, and it was a wound that he couldn't heal. Oftentimes I have read, and I'm not an expert on the asteroids, but this is my basic understanding. Chiron is a place that we may be able to teach others through our own unhealable wound or through our own suffering. It may be bringing up traumatic wounds. When Chiron was moving through Taurus, that wound might be financial. It could be worry about not having fundamental resources. When Chiron moves back into Aries 3, the wound often becomes related to our charisma, of convincing someone of our perspective. Like we may feel like we have to convince someone, but we're afraid to speak out. Or we may feel like we've tried to win someone over who was being hostile towards us, but we may feel like we failed in that regard. And when these planets oppose Chiron, our efforts to create peace, our efforts to find equilibrium could be running into this wound of feeling like we're ineffective in being able to express ourselves in ways that could get people to see things from our own perspective. Kate says 9 degrees Libra. Got it. I was trying to figure out what you're talking about when my Mercury revealed itself. Thank you. I thought I misheard. No problem. Says the 15th. My twins turned 13. Nice, Kate. Happy birthday to your twins. So Chiron moving through Aries 3 is a potential feeling of inadequacy around selling something. Maybe it's something that's very personal to us. Maybe we're feeling, I know that for me, like, I not the most enthusiastic marketer. Like sometimes I don't think I'm bad at marketing, but it's not an enjoyable thing for me. And this, I could see like personally, I'm like, oh, this is probably when I'm going to be advertising a lot of my fall programs. And maybe there may be a feeling of inadequacy around that. Your mileage may vary with that. If there's something that you are trying to sell, an idea or something like that, there may be some challenges around that where you might feel like you might have to try something new or get out of your comfort zone potentially. All right, the 18th, we see Mercury. Mercury's screaming through Libra. Okay, it's going really quickly. And it makes an opposition to Saturn. So again, this could be where we're trying to negotiate. Maybe we're negotiating a contract or something like that. And where Mercury is asking a lot of questions about what everybody's individual needs and perspective are. But it's running right headlong into Saturn. And this might be an impasse in a negotiation where we feel stuck in a world of someone else's creation, or we are so bound to our individual royal decrees or values that we have a lot of difficulty compromising with someone else. And again, I would encourage you to fall back towards the skills of empathy and of objectivity during this period with Mercury opposite Saturn. That brings us to our first quarter moon on the 18th as well. So let's go back a couple hours with this. This is at 25 degrees of Sagittarius. So here's the perfection moment right here. 25 degrees Virgo squaring 25 degrees Sagittarius. We talked about this at the beginning of the broadcast. I think that when we are looking at quarter moons, it's important to understand the intention of the sun. And I say intention because oftentimes the sun is associated with the light of the mind, the conscious intention that we might be trying to shine out into the world. The conscious intention of Virgo 3 is, did we skip Virgo 3? We didn't even talk about Virgo 3. That's unfortunate. How are we in Virgo 3 already? I missed that. I apologize for that. So the sun moves into Virgo 3 on the 12th, right? So let's back up a second and let's look at this first. So let's talk about this in the context of the first quarter moon. So Virgo 2, bringing something into matter, a dream, a goal, an idea, weaving fate. Virgo 3, you see the 10 of Pentacles here with a figure, potentially an elder, who is surrounded by friends and family, but is maybe reevaluating his life or getting ready to pass over a threshold or pass on his legacy to the next generation. The daimon or spirit in this decan is Hestia, the keeper of the sacred flame. Like there's an association with the Vestal Virgins in this decan, where we have to keep the flame burning by understanding that the form is changing, but the animating essence is what we're trying to preserve. So the flame itself is the essence. We can transfer that to a new vehicle, a new vessel when we are transferring something. You know, the Book of Tea and Book Thoth call it the Lord of Wealth. Austin Cabot calls it the sarcophagus, which is something that preserves something even in death, in the transition to something new. So in this first quarter moon, we might have the intention of trying to preserve something and or return it to the earth. But we're dealing with a decan of Sagittarius, a crisis point where we might be feeling tired. We might be feeling exhausted. We might be feeling overburdened. That's the decan where we're carrying all the wands. And we're trying to get to the finish line. It is the last decan before the winter solstice. It's one where we're maybe grinding our body into bits to get something done. So I would be careful of pushing yourself too hard. There is the 10 of wands, which is the lunar decan. Be careful of pushing yourself too hard around this period of time. I think that one of the things that we can do is delegate, right? Instead of taking on all the responsibility ourselves, is how do we ask for help when we need it? I've witnessed a lot of Sagittarius 3 people in my life, my partner, some of my students, some of my friends. They have difficulty sometimes asking for help. They are very responsible. They feel a lot of responsibility towards their friends and family, and they are capable of carrying very heavy burdens to a degree. Maybe in their youth, they were somebody that carried great weights emotionally, physically, etc. I used to joke that my partner, I don't know, she could carry just amazing amounts of weight. And she was like a pack horse, right? She was just being able to carry so much stuff. And as we are aging, our physical abilities change. I have another client, that is a very strong individual who carried a lot, moved a lot of things for other people, with Saturn in this decan. But as they're aging, some parts start to decay, like some shoulder stuff. And we had a lot of discussions around delegation and around asking for help. So this might be a time when we need to learn about that. To get something finished, we might have to make either a really important spiritual effort to get it across the finish line, or understand when we're pushing ourselves too hard and we need to take a rest, or we need to delegate something and ask for help. Mercury sextile Jupiter on the 21st. So now Mercury is moving through the second decan. It's past its opposition to Saturn. Maybe we've gotten an impasse in a negotiation, and now we have a positive sextile with Jupiter. So this is going to be on the 21st. I'm going to move forward. I just went forward an hour. That was not where I wanted to. Oops. No. Now we went forward too far. So here's September 21st. And now Mercury is making that sextile to Jupiter at 17 degrees of Libra and Leo. So after we've gone through the negotiation phase, now we might be understanding, maybe there's a victory that happens. That 6 of Wands card that Jupiter is moving through the second decan of Leo shows a victory. I think that this could be where we're finally maybe overcoming some of the impasse. We've found a more authentic expression of our own values, and we've appreciated and empathized with the authenticity of someone else we might be negotiating with. And that helps to break up the impasse and potentially lead to a more positive signification. I think this is where a lot of the questions that we're asking finally meet with some success. So when you're going through your month, recognize that the astrology is telling a story, and there are going to be parts of a story that are conflict, and then there's going to be resolution, conflict and resolution. This is often how the great stories of our lives are unfolding. And if we understand that we have to have extra periods of strength and self-care during those periods of conflict, and that there will be relief, maybe like when the Mercury sextile Jupiter happens, that can get us through those more difficult periods. Let's see. Carl says, is there an element of completion in Sagittarius 3? Funny that you asked, Carl. I was referencing you. Yes, I think that Sagittarius 3 is barn eager, right? It is the recognition that you only have a few more miles to go in the marathon, and we push ourselves to the brink to get to that completion. It's called a horse's skull, right? We have to be careful of pushing ourselves too hard, but the end of the Sagittarius 3 journey is the rebirth of the sun. It is the rebirth at the winter solstice of the return of the light. So if we can weather those difficulties, we can get ourselves to a new rebirthing energy. And I think that is part of Sagittarius 3 is we are trying to complete something that requires spirit fire, I guess you could say, that requires strong belief. The other part of Sagittarius 3 that we can often fall victim to sometimes is there is a by any means necessary type of energy in Sagittarius 3 where we might try to justify the end the end justifies the means. And that can be very destructive. So we have to be careful of saying, well, I have to get this done, so I'm going to do whatever it takes. And sometimes that includes hurting ourselves or hurting others. So that is something to be aware of too. But yes, we are trying to bring something towards rebirth in that decan. Okay, let's talk about the Libra 1 sun. First of all, let's take a break again. And we've got one more decan to get through. We've got our animal and our I-Ching, and we should be able to get this done in an hour. We should be able to come in under 3 hours. All right, I'm going to get some water. I'm going to stretch my legs. I'm going to stretch my hips. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Potentially the last live monthly, but not the last live. I really do enjoy the conversations. The co-creation aspect of this channel is really, I think, one of the more beautiful manifestations of it. We're just trying to streamline some of this a little bit. But do me a favor, like the video, subscribe. The more interaction that we get through likes and subscriptions, the more it really reaches people. So if you find this information valuable and you think that people would benefit from it, or if you've benefited from it and you think others would as well, liking the video can go a long way to the algorithm serving it up to more folks. So that's a great reason to do so and to help grow the channel and whatnot. And it helps me too. It helps me to get some new clients and students in the door too, which can help me to continue to do this work. And so it's a very simple act that really goes a long way. Okay, let's talk about the Libros. That's what my partner always, when she sees a Libra guy, she's like, hey, it's a Libro. So this is our fall equinox, and we are dealing with, let's bring up the decan flashcard and we'll talk about Libra 1. We have the Two of Swords. This card is very mysterious to me. Whenever I get this card, I'm kind of, the decan information has helped me understand it. But when I was first a little like tarot baby, this card was always a little bit confusing to me. It's a moon-ruled decan, so it's lunar. So there is sort of an intuitive element to it where you see with the blindfold. You have someone who is guarding a threshold. It's a threshold guardian, right? We're coming into the threshold of a new season. We are trying to find balance and equilibrium. We might be going off into potentially the underworld. There is some associations with this card and with this decan with Ma'at, the Egyptian, I guess it is a god or goddess, but it's also a concept. The theme that always comes in my brain is Ma'at is a concept by which we measure our pain, which is a reference to an old John Lennon song, which says God is a concept by which we measure our pain. But Ma'at is more of a conceptual ideal of balance and equilibrium. The idea behind Ma'at was that you would weigh the heart and the deeds of the heart against the weight of a feather. And what were you carrying with you into the next life, into the underworld, etc. And it was a way of kind of doing a judgment of the soul. So this is a threshold where we might be doing a review of what we've done up to this point in the year. What have our efforts been successful? What are we bringing with us into the dark part of the year where the nights start to become longer than the day in the northern hemisphere? How are we getting an awareness? Chokmah. Okay, Chokmah is the Kabbalistic sphere in the tree of life, Kabbalistic tree of life, that is associated with an awareness. And all of the twos in tarot give us this like flash of awareness, like the aha. And in this case, we're getting the flash of awareness of an imbalance or of someone else's perspective. And that's where we initiate the work of doing restorative justice. And sometimes it's painful. Sometimes when we get an awareness of an imbalance, we get angry because we're like, that's not fair. I always ask clients that have prominent Libra 1 placements, when you were a kid, a lot of these folks have siblings. And usually they're like the younger sibling or something like that, or the middle child. I was like, did the words "that's not fair" come out of your mouth a lot when you were younger? They're like, all the time, because my brother or sister was getting stuff, and I just was like, I got so angry, and we would get in all these conflicts because of the injustice of it all, right? So there may be this awareness with this. And of course, you can see here the fixed star diadem that we talked about at 9 degrees of Libra. The daimon, the Uranus. This is another kind of cliche breaking decan. Oftentimes we think of Libra as a Venusian sign that is, peaceful and always wanting to, like, there's been accused of being people pleasers sometimes. And don't ever forget, though, that this is a Venus and Saturn ruled sign, because Saturn is the exaltation lord. So there is I like the iron fist under the velvet glove type of energy with Libra. I would also say that this particular decan can get really angry. Like, I think that, and not necessarily angry for themselves, but for other people. Like, they get angry at other people's behest when they see someone else being the victim of an imbalance or something like that. This is the righteous indignation, the Uranus anger comes out, like, that's not fair. This is an imbalance. And that's actually really important, that energy of understanding when something isn't fair, because it gives us valuable information for restoring equilibrium. Okay. So the sun moves into Libra on the 22nd. That's our equinox here. Let's move forward here. And, often there are mundane astrologers that would look at the ingresses, the Aries ingress and the Libra ingress, for like the fate of a city or the fate of a country. So you'd have to change your location to make that really relevant. But there are some things that we can take from this. We have Venus in Scorpio 1. Venus is hosting the sun now. It is in aversion to it. A lot of our injustice feelings and imbalances could be through hungers that aren't being met. Could be through, like I said, I don't want to see this manifested, but the astrologer brain says there are going to be like food shortages or food issues, hungers that aren't being met. Some of that could also be a reflection of wealth inequality and wealth gaps that are really coming up in our zeitgeist with the increase of the oligarch power and the doubling down and the wealth grab that we've seen in various governments across the world, really. And then the rising cost of living and the people of those countries having a more and more difficult time getting their needs met because wages have not increased in proportion to the costs of things, and the enshittification of everything, of what corporate greed that is giving us less value for more cost, right? So a lot of those things I think can be spoken towards with this Libra energy. I would also really keep an eye on the democratic socialists in America, like Mamdani and Abdul El Sayed in my own state of Michigan, because a lot of their, first of all, Mamdani is a Libra and Abdul Sayed is a Scorpio. So their charts are going to be lit up a lot, but they are speaking a lot towards the rebalancing of these inequalities, of holding corporate power accountable and making a cost of living more affordable for people. So I think that this could be really part of the highlight around this particular Libra entry point is getting our needs met in response to rising inequality. especially financially. Shortly after the Libra ingress, the Sun is going to oppose Neptune. So here is the Sun-Neptune opposition, about 3 degrees. So that awareness of injustice could be confusing, right? Because we might have really strong personal desires, but we could also feel a little bit of a power outage. Our leadership could be communicating in confusing ways as well. We could have a need for making peace, but since we're continuing to glamorize violence and domination societies, that could be there could be a real disconnect between our peacemaking abilities and the selfish desires of people in power. So these dynamics are going to be playing out. I've often experienced connections with Neptune as dissolving energies too. So we could see like almost like an ego dissolving type of energy. The Sun in Libra is already challenged. The Sun is in its fall. The Sun wants to shine its own light, but it's in a sign that's related to darkness and the increase of darkness, the exaltation of Saturn, but also in the need to see something from someone else's perspective. The Sun does not want to share. The Sun wants to create vitality, but it does so in a way that dominates the sky. I've heard people say that Leo wants to just be the brightest thing in the sky and it just blots out everything else, the Sun, right? Venus or Libra wants to be the brightest star in the sky, but it doesn't shine so bright that you can't see the other stars. And that might be the balance that we have to strike here, is how do we shine our light, but not in a way that blots out everything and everyone else, right? The Sun will then trine Pluto on the 26th. Okay, so here's the Sun making the trine with Pluto. So it will kind of transfer the light from Neptune to Pluto here. Again, reigniting the conversations about injustices where we have centralized power figures and people on the fringe of society. It might also start highlighting an injustice in like immigration statuses and like the way that people are being treated through like ICE and things of that nature. I think those are the topics that are going to be on people's minds at this Libra ingress, and highlighting and shining a spotlight on some of those injustices and maybe working towards rebalancing extremes. The other thing that's happening on that day is the full moon. Okay, so in all of these contextual things here, we've got a full moon happening. All right, so, oops, let's go back. We're going to go back here. There it is. All right, so I changed the orientation just if you're confused. So we've got the Sun here, and this is a full moon conjoining Neptune, and we've got the Sun making a trine to Pluto, and then it's going to trine Uranus. And so we've got kind of a grand trine between the Sun, Pluto, and Uranus. We've got Mars at the anaretic degree, the last degree of Cancer. So there could be some volatile energy around that, especially when it comes to excess and scarcity. You have Jupiter starting to head towards the south node. Yeah, just a lot of trying to balance out individual needs with the needs of an other. All right, a lot of negotiation that happens at this full moon every year. But there may be some confusion around what our personal desires are with the Neptune element with it. And Saturn is co-present too. So there could also be this Saturnine element of really trying to examine our own personal values and how that affects our ability to cooperate with others. Again, we'll do a full breakdown on that. Mars squares Chiron on the 27th. And then moves into Leo. So the Sun, or the Mars Chiron square with this anaretic degree, 29 degrees Cancer. Remember what we said about Chiron at the final degrees of Aries, where we're trying to convince someone of our perspective through our charisma. We're trying to do a motivational speech. We're trying to use our humor or motivate people towards following our value system. And when Mars makes that square with Chiron, there could be some real challenges around how we go about doing that. We could feel some real pain in expressing scarcity and surplus that makes it very difficult to win people over to our side. You could see leadership trying to convince people or gaslight people. This seems like a gaslighting like square to me with the Mars Chiron square. But that is something that happens right before it moves into Leo. Okay. Now, that is interesting from one perspective, as it changes the dignity of Mars. Okay. It improves it, I guess, because it's not in its fall anymore. It will change the host of Mars from the moon to the sun. So now we have the Mars being hosted by the sun in a sextile. So really we're taking action and taking on new roles based on our desire to restore justice and peace, potentially. But we have a malefic enclosure that begins on the 27th. So here is what we're looking at when Mars moves into Leo. We have Mars making an aspect to the early degrees of the sun, and we have Saturn making the aspect to the middle degrees of Libra, and it's hemming in the sun. Now, 2 pressure points on our solar ability to see things from someone else's perspective. Mars maybe makes us feel like we have to fight for our identity, for our role, for our own authenticity. Saturn is saying we might need to reimagine our own personal value system. We might feel bound to a value system that we don't agree with. Both of those could put pressure on us to act in a fiery way that makes it much harder to see things from someone else's perspective, which is what the sun is asking us to do when it's in Libra 1. We recently had a malefic enclosure of the sun like a few weeks ago. Actually, this was happening, I think, last week. This was happening last week when all the stuff was going down in the astrological community, where I think that there was a lot of pressure on identity around that. And how do we respect someone's identity? What damage is caused by making assumptions or using toxic language around identity? That manifested in maybe questioning identities, questioning how we show up, questioning how we shine our light in public spaces. And there probably is going to be a revisiting of that feeling where you might be confused about how to shine your solar light because of these different pressures coming from the malefic planets. Now, it only lasts for a week or so, but sometimes that's enough to really feel challenged, right? And the sun is already in a little bit of a difficult space being in its fall in Libra. So I guess my advice would be maintain some objectivity, even though you're feeling pressure to perform, feeling pressure to state your values. Okay, whatever happens at that full moon, you might feel a need to speak up about it. There could be an event that could be very emotionally charged. And oftentimes when we have emotionally charged events, we feel like we have to respond, or we feel like we have to take an action. My preferred method is to observe first and to kind of center myself so that when I do take an action, it is one that is both well-informed and centered. And I don't mean centered politically or anything like that. I mean that my emotions are calm so that I can be as objective as possible, so that I'm not being reactive. I'm being, I guess, I don't know, proactive, or I am being taking a deep breath and creating space between the event and the feelings it brings up, and then my response to it. To me, that space is very, very valuable. in that space, you can feel a wide range of emotions. Sometimes the first feeling that we feel is really negative and violent. And if we come from that space, we can create more damage in the situation rather than restore justice or peace. And this is something that is important to me as someone who desires being a bridge or a peacemaker. I have to create that space between the anger and the rage that comes up in me in feelings of injustice and then my actual response to it. And sometimes people will misinterpret that. Sometimes people will misinterpret not giving an immediate response as an endorsement of whichever side that they are in favor of. And I think that we have to allow for space in conflict situations. I think that there is a concept in the Japanese culture that I'm learning about, where if couples are fighting, sometimes they just say, let's take a time out. You go to your corner, I'll go to mine, and we'll calm down a little bit, and then we'll come back when some of the waters have settled a little bit. And I think that's good practice in situations too. I wish the internet could learn this a little bit too, because a lot of times what happens on the internet is that something will happen, it will ignite very strong feelings, and then people will automatically make a comment on it and add fuel to an already raging fire. If we could step back from conflict situations temporarily, learn about what we're actually feeling, and then process those feelings, I think it would lead to better actions. I don't like the immediacy of the internet. I'm somebody who appreciates doing something slowly and well considered. And the immediacy of the internet does not allow for nuance, and it does not allow for reflection. It's so easy to type a response to something. And sometimes when we do that, we don't have all the information yet. The story hasn't completely unfolded, and we haven't been able to process what we're truly feeling. Sometimes we aren't emotionally literate enough to know what we are feeling in that moment and what need is not being met. So if we can take time to write in our journal, to process and say, what feeling am I feeling, and what need is either being met or not being met, it makes it so much easier to ask for what we need from a place of compassion and empathy, rather than just adding punitive judgment to the conversation, which creates more violence and resistance. This is the key. It creates resistance for the other party to actually cooperate and help us to get our needs met. When we demand and when we say, you have to do this because I am going to shame and guilt you, it creates resistance to the cooperation. It gets us further away from getting what we actually want, because the person is being coerced into doing that through violence, rather than through helping to bring them to an understanding of empathy of maybe the hurt that they did or things of that nature, so that they are taking that action divinely guided rather than just responding to punitive pressure. And I say that because if someone responds to punitive pressure, they may not actually be learning the lesson that would stop them from doing it again in the future. So by taking a slower process during this Sun and Malefic enclosure, taking time to feel your feelings, connect it with needs, ask for what you want in a request, I think it helps to allow the other party to learn something from it, to truly learn through empathy, rather than feeling like that they are being coerced into doing that action. To me, that is how we create a more equitable society and find understanding in the most difficult situation. What I'm realizing is I've had people that have criticized nonviolent communication. I'm trying to listen to those criticisms and the fears that come up. And I think a lot of people think it's just like bending over. it's the furthest thing from that, if you really look at the nuance of it. But I think that it takes effort to really, truly hear someone else. We don't take the time to be with each other. We just feel so much pressure to send off a text, send off an email, to make a statement, to take a stand, whatever it might be, that we don't take the time to truly sit with another person and what they're experiencing. And this is something that I found really valuable from this process, is how do we truly sit with something without judgment first, right? Without othering, without making something or someone or some concept the enemy right away. How do we come out of the dualistic thinking and come back into unity? That to me is the real gift of that. So that might be something to think about and consider when we're going through this period of time. Rachel says, Spencer, very wise reflections on the immediacy of the internet. I think even of simple non-conflictual communications where we receive an email and feel like we have to decide right away. Yes. This kind of pressure leads to a lot of poor judgment. I agree. I think that this is how do we give ourselves back the ability to slow down? I asked this with my partner. I was like, what I value is the ability to take life at a slower pace, because it allows me to make better decisions that aren't just based on a feeling of an irrational feeling in the moment. It helps me connect the irrational feeling, which is sometimes very justified, to a rational action that could lead to a better outcome. And again, we don't have to respond to every single thing right away. In fact, if you've got some Taurus energy in your chart, as I do, if someone tries to make you respond to something right away, you will do the opposite. You will say, nope, I'm not going to respond to being coerced or being pressured. I can't tell you how many times I have dug my heels in when someone's trying to pressure me. That is one of the things that I despise the most, is when someone is trying to rush me, because I have a process about how I go about things. And if you're trying to rush me, you're going to get, if you try to push the bull, you're going to get the horns. That is sort of my take on it. But I think that it is a good lesson for a lot of us of how to not utilize our horns right away and just allow ourselves to feel into the answers and connect that with real needs. I can't tell you how many people in my life, my family, and seem so disconnected from what they really need, that it causes them to act in certain ways that I don't think they even truly understand. This is about emotional literacy. This is about emotional intelligence and connecting with things that we truly need. Rachel says, simply restore the simple maxim of sleep on it. Totally. 100%. Yeah. If you try to push someone who's not ready to make a decision, oftentimes the answer you're going to get is no. And sometimes even just leaving space for someone else to go through their process may lead to a better outcome as well. Rachel says there's a lot of things we don't even need to respond to or at all. Amen to that. Amen to that. Okay. So that's our malefic enclosure. That ends when the sun makes an opposition to Saturn on the 4th. Okay. So we're not going to discuss the Sun-Saturn opposition necessarily in the September astrology, but it will end when Saturn makes the opposition to the sun. Okay. All right. On the 28th, the sun is going to trine Uranus, and we have the first aspect of the moon. Okay. So the moon is going to make its first aspect after it is released from the bond. So if we go back here, we could see that we have the opposition, I believe, I think it's opposition to Mercury. So the first aspect is, let me see. I'm going to go back here. That's the other thing too. I'd rather be correct by going slow than to be wrong by going fast. So like, oh man. Yeah, I think that the actual first aspect is not the opposition to Saturn. It's the opposition to Mercury. So we have the moon outside of the 15-degree separation, conjoining Chiron, opposing Mercury at 27 degrees of Libra. So we may be having a little bit of a tension between how we are creating inner peace and seeing things from multiple perspectives and making adjustments to others, and maybe needing to win someone over to our side, right? Through charisma, through humor, etc. That's the first aspect of that full moon. We didn't talk about the trine with the Uranus. I mean, this is innovative ideas around communication, innovative ideas about how to rebalance and see things from someone else's perspective. Could also be some important justice conversations regarding technology. We're having a lot of those conversations with the rise of data centers in the United States, and especially in the Midwest and the state that I live in Michigan. On the 29th, we have, let's see, I keep going by hour. There we go. Mercury will trine the North Node. Okay, so a repetition of that Venus trine with the North Node, with the ability to ask the right questions to create inner peace before we go off and have interactions with other people. The making the small adjustments that will help us to bring balance and maintain harmony within our lives. And also asking the right questions to be able to unravel old karmic knots, okay? And to be able to maybe potentially revisit something painful, but to do so in the spirit of reconciliation and restorative justice. One of the things that's super powerful in the Marshall Rosenberg work is oftentimes he'll talk to people who've had really, really traumatic, nasty traumas. I'm talking about like seeing a friend get murdered, or like, sexual violence, things of that nature. And oftentimes the victims of that violence are in extreme amounts of pain. And he does a role play where he plays the role of the perpetrator who is giving empathy to the victim, where he says, I am going to play this role. I want you to tell me all the things that you're feeling. And then he uses nonviolent communication to say, hey, this is what I was, I hear you. I hear how painful that was for you. And then he also this is the controversial part that I know will be difficult it's difficult for myself, and I think it will be difficult for a lot of people. Then it talks about how we have empathy for what were the needs that the perpetrator was trying to get met, of understanding that and having empathy that goes both ways, even if they're perpetrating like horrific things. I do think that is valuable. That doesn't mean that we're condoning the horrible things. But if we're understanding the need that wasn't getting met, that they used violence to get met, potentially that can be restorative justice, because it teaches that person to meet that need with less harm. Do you see what I mean? Like, and sometimes, there has to be some removal, right? Sometimes there's times where people just can't function in a certain situation or in society or whatnot. But I think it's really an interesting perspective to say, what need was somebody that perpetrated horrific violence, what need were they not getting met that we could help teach them through restorative justice and empathy, where they truly start to care about the other person and the harm that was caused, so that they can get that need met in a much less violent way in the future, so that they don't hurt people in the future. I think that's a really important part of it. I don't know. It's something I'm working with. Again, a new concept that I'm testing out. And I would be curious to see if any of you have experience with it, if you've tried it in different situations, if you find that there's difficulties using it in certain situations. I'm also curious to hear about that. Because I don't know if it's necessarily perfect for every single situation. But it's given me a lot to chew on, a lot to think about. So with Mercury trining the North Node, we might be able to start to understand how to unravel some of those karmic knots through becoming peaceful and centered first, and finding the right balance and equilibrium and right maintenance of the balancing elements of our life. With the opposition with Chiron, again, we may be running into some tension around selling our own perspective to somebody else. And this is a repetition of Venus, where then Mercury moves into Scorpio. So it goes through the trine with the North Node, the opposition with Chiron, and then moves into Scorpio on the 30th. So this is our last aspect for the month here, or last entry point, ingress, where Mercury is moving into Scorpio. Now Mercury is being hosted by Mars, okay, not by Cancer. It is now in a square with its host Mars, and Mars is in the overcoming position. So after this, what is a potentially challenging set of conversations, negotiations, we might feel some grief. We might mourn, like grieve a loss. And it may be because we are trying to take on a new role and a new responsibility. When we realize that our actions have been hurting others, sometimes there is some painful, humbling work that we have to go through to change our behavior and to change our identities through that. You know, we've had a lot of conversations in the astrological community about racism and about the damage, the horrific damage that racist language can do within the community. And there is I hope, a lot of reevaluation about how we identify and how we identify other people. How do we characterize other people? The hurt I was hearing in that situation, that we need to mourn and grieve, is people of color in the astrological community were, first of all, not being respected. Like there was conversations about intelligence, like that. I'm sure that was extremely painful for people of color who are intellectuals and study the very difficult work that astrology requires, the very intellectual work of and detailed analysis that you need to be able to do. And to hear an elder in the community say that he didn't even consider people of color as intelligent as him until his mid-30s had to be extraordinarily painful and invalidating of the work, the extreme amount of work that was put in to try to carve out a space where the door was not necessarily open, but maybe even actively closed in a lot of circumstances. Think about how hard. I'm getting sad thinking about how hard people have to work when they are in a racial minority to try to gain entry into spaces that are inhabited traditionally by white privilege. I mean, I'm empathizing with the anger at feeling invalidated, at how hard I see some of my friends in the astrology community that work so hard to gain access and to work on their craft. And that's something where when Mercury moves into Scorpio, the pain of changing an identity and the grieving that needs to happen when we realize that maybe something we have done or a way that we've identified has or created identity for others creates pain. One of the things that I like about Marshall Rosenberg talks about grieving our actions, mourning the pain that has been caused. And I think as people when we're trying to dismantle white supremacy and racism, how do people in power and in privilege start to mourn their ineffectiveness in creating harmony with others if their language has hurt others or if their viewpoints have hurt others? You have to really mourn that. You have to feel genuine sadness that your actions have hurt and disempowered others. That's the first step towards restorative justice. And I think Mercury in Scorpio can be really powerful for helping us to really grieve like those types of actions and feelings. And then that helps us to do better in the future. Okay, that is what I have for you for September. Let's give you a little preview of October. Okay. We've got a new moon in Libra. We've got a full moon in Taurus. We have the Venus retrograde in Scorpio happening in October. The sun will move into Scorpio. We have a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. A Venus cazimi at 0 degrees Scorpio. Venus will then retrograde back into Libra and go all the way back to 22 degrees Libra. And we also have a Mars-Pluto opposition in October, which is something that could bring out some real challenging emotions and feelings, especially socially in the collective. So those are going to be some things we will try to engage with in October. Let's do the hexagram. We have hexagram 23. This one's really fascinating. Hexagram 23 translates to splitting apart. Okay. Let's see. Rachel says this fire horse year is sprinting. It's just my perspective. Let's see. Yes, it is. It's getting, there's a lot of action that's happening in the fire horse year. Is that the year? Like, sorry, I don't even know if I remember which year it is anymore. Was last year the rabbit year? No. Last year was the snake, right? Because it goes snake and then horse. Okay. Splitting apart. This is a hexagram that also translates to deterioration, stripping away, collapse, falling apart. Hopefully, we'll be able to do some of this consciously, right? Rather than have it happen to us. But this hexagram says splitting apart. The judgment says it's not beneficial to have somewhere to go. It says things are falling apart. The situation around you is deteriorating. Inferior people are on the rise, and they are displacing people of value and merit. Relationships that once could be taken for granted have frayed and dissolved. Old ways of doing things are disintegrating, and nothing has yet taken their place. Because the time is not propitious, there is no advantage in trying to undertake anything now. The deterioration that you face may result from changes in outer conditions over which you have no control. We saw a lot of contact with like Pluto and Neptune, these planets related to more social, larger scale issues, right? Okay. Yeah, Rachel says, wood snake was last year. Okay, good. Carl says, fire horse limps on some days. Yeah, it does. I feel like we're in a Hellenistic void of course moon today. I feel like there's a little bit of that limping energy today, but we're getting through it. We might come in under 3 hours if I stay focused here. The deterioration you face may result from changes in outer conditions from which you have no control. In that case, you should not blame yourself for the fact that everything changes. Alternatively, the problem may be that elements of your life now seem to have outlived their usefulness. Old habits no longer serve your interests. Old assumptions no longer make sense. Remember, we talked about releasing old beliefs and assumptions with the South Node in the South Node eclipse in Leo. Okay. Things that you once took for granted no longer seem solid and dependable. This means that you too are undergoing change. You're experiencing the end of an old cycle without the comforting assurance of what is yet to come. In either case, it is useless to struggle against the time. Your position has been weakened by the changes around you. You might be vulnerable, or either due to your position, your emotions, or both. For this reason, avoid confrontations. You will only make things worse. Don't get into confrontations, get into empathy. The structure of the hexagram suggests the proper course of conduct at this time. The lower trigram, Earth, symbolizes devotion and acceptance. The upper trigram, Mountain, symbolizes stillness and patience. We talked about that a lot today, patience. These are virtues to adopt now. You must endure this period of deterioration and wait for better times to emerge. According to the law of change, they inevitably will. In the meantime, acquiesced in the new acquiesce in the new conditions without surrendering to your principles. Without surrendering your principles, excuse me. Keep quiet and maintain a low profile to remain detached and untroubled to the extent that circumstances allow. Emotional reactions will only drain you. This is really interesting. I didn't read this whole thing beforehand, but it's really speaking towards what we've been trying to work on today. Emotional reactions will only drain you and cause you to do foolish things. But if you can stay calm, collected, and above the fray, with creating space between your emotions and your reaction, you can safeguard your position during this difficult time, and you'll be less vulnerable to manipulation. Change is coming to both your outer world and your inner experiences. This change may be painful and upsetting, but you must let it run its course. It is a law of nature. Whatever becomes great will eventually be lessened, and whatever becomes full will eventually be emptied. You cannot alter this general trend. Therefore, the wisest course is to withdraw and wait for the time of renewal. There's two changing lines here. Okay. First initial changing line says the legs of the bed are split apart. Those who persevere are destroyed. Misfortune. The legs of the bed are destroyed. The metaphor means that someone or something is undermining your position from beneath. People with ulterior motives have entered your environment and are setting in motion the forces of deterioration. Because it is not yet clear what elements are at work, you need to act with circumspection and caution. If you insist on going ahead without taking these facts into account, you will meet with misfortune. Right now, there is little that you can do, but wait until events become clearer. So there's an undermining element potentially in the astrological influences. So we have to wait for some information to become clear. Again, requires patience. Third line, he splits with them, no blame. You find yourself in a negative situation from which you cannot easily escape. This may be an inferior environment, untrustworthy people, or a combination of the two. Do not compromise your integrity. If others choose to act badly, that is their choice. Let them go their own way. Separate yourself from them as best you can, even if this leads them to misunderstand you or criticize you. If you do not fall in with them, you can maintain your own principles during this dark time. Conversely, try to foster connections with good influences and align yourself with decent people whom you can trust. This will give you the strength you need to ride out your current difficulties. This is another element of nonviolent communication. How do we speak to what we do want? How do we speak in the positive of what we do want to create? How do we become bridges to creating a little bit of a better experience for someone else or for ourselves, but mostly for other people? How do we make other people's lives better? That's a question that I think that is at the core of Rosenberg's teachings, is how do we speak into existence what we want and what other people, and hear what other people desire and need, and then do so in a way that is, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by the ice cream truck outside playing the most horrible song. There is an unmarked ice cream truck in my neighborhood that plays like, do you guys remember like that Jack Black, what is it? What's that movie that Jack Black is in with Tenacious D? And in the beginning of Tenacious D, he's meeting Kyle Gass for the first time, and he's singing, do Kyle Gass, you fucking rap. It's like, I don't remember what the song is, but he's like making up his own words to it, and it's just it's Jack Black at his very finest. This ice cream truck plays that every single cycle around my neighborhood, and all I can think of when I hear it is like Jack Black, just like doing his Jack Black thing. So apologize for the distraction. Okay, how can we maintain our integrity, create space, speak towards what we do want to create, hear with great empathy what other people are desiring and needing as well, even if they're expressing those things negatively? How do we hear the need within it? Okay, this is part of that work. It's changing to hexagram number 22, adornment, grace, beauty, persuasion, ornamentation, simplicity, inner beauty. The judgment says adornment, success. In small matters, it is beneficial to undertake something. Adornment brings success as a small thing. It smooths the path of life and makes it more bearable. When adornment becomes the central thing, it can easily become perverted because it is placed above other human values and human needs. Nevertheless, the study of beauty helps us to understand the profundity of the world. This is a good lesson for Libra, right? Through the contemplation of beauty and form, we discover both the demands of a particular time and the power of the unchanging. And through attention to how beauty is produced, we apprehend the connections between the outer form and the inner nature. The beauty of fire or of a mountain range is a natural product of the processes that give rise to these things. It is the same in human life. The Book of Changes teaches that outer beauty should emerge as the natural product of inner beauty. The adornment that does not simply cover or disguise a person's nature, but becomes its organic expression. In practical terms, this hexagram signifies that you cannot exert great influence on the situation, but you can have a positive effect in small ways. Behave with tact and consideration with others. For the time being, you must accept aspects of the situation that you do not like, but you can make progress at the periphery if you act with charm and grace. Work on polishing your appearance and your powers of persuasion. Brush up on your talents. Smooth out the rough edges in your life and in your relationships with others. It's a great time to, use more effective communication skills. This is a good time to improve your habits of communication and self-expression. Consider making minor changes to your surroundings so that they better express and reflect who you are. All of these activities should be understood as a means of improving the presentation of your inner self and your real values. They are not ends in themselves, but this reminds you to focus on self-presentation so that, and you should not take yourself too seriously. Do not allow yourself to become conceited or self-indulgent, and do not waste time on trivial things. The outer persona must serve the inner person and not the other way around. The best way to achieve outer beauty is to let the beauty within shine forth in your words and deeds. If inner beauty is lacking, outward display will not compensate for it in the long run. For without the nourishment of what is within, outer beauty will soon fade. Therefore, the best long-term strategy for the maintenance of grace and beauty is the development of a graceful and beautiful soul. I love that. I love that. We can't really just we can't put lipstick on a pig. We have to do the hard inner work, right? We can't just say, conciliatory things without actually making internal changes. That's huge, right? We have to truly feel empathy to make change. Empathy with ourselves, with our true needs and desires, with the true beauty of ourselves as well. Then it will radiate out from us, not the other way around. Bonnie says, hello, lovely Spencer and friends in the chat. Happy Venus Day. Nice to see you, Bonnie. Hope everything's going well your way. We're just kind of wrapping the day up with our I-Ching and our animal. Okay, let's talk about this animal. I got a mythological animal for you guys. This is the Kangamato. Look at this thing. Looks like a pterodactyl. Now, the Kangamato. I'm going to read to you from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. The Kangamato is a creature similar to a pterodactyl that lives in the Jinundu swamps in western Zambia near the Congo and Angola borders. It is an enormous red bird with leathery skin instead of feathers. Its wing spread was up to 7 feet and looked like bat wings. So this is a cryptid, right? This is like a, like Bigfoot or like a mysterious, potentially mythological animal, potentially interdimensional animal, depending on your belief system. People in the area who have seen Kangamato identified it as a pterodactyl, but they couldn't identify any of the other prehistoric dinosaur pictures. The people believed it to be part of the natural world and not a demon of any kind. Kangamato often capsized canoes, so the villagers would take it an offering of some kind of food when they had to cross areas where it was known to attack. This animal has a talent for bioluminescence, calmness, mischievousness, mystery, reaching new heights, spiritual development, and strategic thinking. It has challenges around aggressiveness, external struggles, internal struggles, outdated or old ways of thinking. When Kangamato appears, it means that this is a time for you to reach new heights. In order to soar through the sky, you have to be released from the ropes holding you down. This means to look to your past and let go of old habits and fears that are no longer necessary. Maybe old belief systems, South Node doing some work there. Kangamato means someone from your past may reappear. Venus retrograde's coming up. It also means you have an interest in history. You may even have a secret desire for things to be how they once were in your life instead of how they are now. Kangamato urges you to seek out the truth so you will gain a better understanding of yourself. That way you can move out of idealizing the past to live in the present. Kangamato is said to glow at night due to its bioluminescence. This signifies that you should let your own inner light shine brightly into the night for all to see. You can be a guiding light to others. Kangamato urges you to deal with any old issues that show up as quickly as you can so they don't pull you down. Fix it and let it go. It urges you to never give up on your dreams. Fly high, glide at a slow pace, and feel the wind above and beneath you. When you can appreciate the simplicities in every moment, you can truly soar. This animal assists you when you need to adjust your way of thinking about things. The world is constantly changing around you. If you're stuck thinking about things as they used to be, then you're blocking yourself and enjoying how things are now. It's this part I don't know if I agree with, but it says it's like listening to music on an 8-track tape player when you could be listening to it via a digital download on your cell phone. The audio files out there will be like, well, it's not the same fidelity. And there's a part of me that's like, well, it's not as good. But I digress. That might be my part of attachment to like analog music. Kangamato urges you to learn how to make a better decision by considering possible outcomes before taking action. While you shouldn't fear living your life to the fullest, you also shouldn't make rash decisions that you haven't thought out. Kangamato reminds you to remain calm, create a strategy, and then make a move. Kangamato means you're entering a time of spiritual development even if you don't realize it yet. Listen, absorb, and hold on to the new knowledge. So it's telling us to slow down, release our old patterns and habits, to really listen to our lives, right? To have empathy for other people's perspectives. Pretty cool. And look at that. What a neat looking animal. This is an artist's rendition of this. That is, yes. Wow, that's right. That is quite the animal, Bonnie says. Yes. Vinyl forever, Bonnie says. Yeah, there are certain things where maybe the modern innovation isn't quite as good. I think that music could be one of those things, but I think there are other things that we have to accept that are changing and that we can come into alignment with those changes. That's why we find the balance. We find the balance of preserving what is healthy, or maybe what hasn't been enshittified by modern capitalism. And then we also have to make adjustments and changes to what the world is asking of us now as well. So I think there is a balance to be struck with that for sure. Okay, friends, that's what I've got for you. Do me a huge favor. If you haven't already, please like the video. It goes a long way. If you're on mobile, like the mobile video. If you're listening after the fact, leave me a comment. How are these things playing out in your life? What have you learned over this live stream? What has resonated with you? How is this playing out in your own life? Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Welcome. We go live generally a couple times a month. Go find me over at Spencer Michaud on my social medias. Sign up for a reading at spencermichaud.com if you are needing additional guidance. Sign up for my newsletter, please, if you could. That'll help us stay connected, especially with new class offerings. I would love to stay connected with you in that. It also is a way to stay connected outside of some of the algorithms from social media. It's a way to stay connected to creators in a very intimate way that isn't dependent on visibility from big tech oligarchs. It's important. And then go support my partner, Tanya Andrews, over at Third Coast Mojo. She's doing a lot of great work. She's releasing a bunch of amazing stuff in the coming weeks ahead. She has a backlog of material that she's been making over the last few months that's going to be coming out. And it's really good stuff. She's an incredible creator and maker. And there's a lot of love and care and attention that goes into those works. And I hope that you can support her. So, friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you for your wisdom and for co-creating this with me. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for just being present and helping to go through this journey together. I like seeing old friends in the chat here. Rachel says, thank you, Spencer. Rest well. Look forward to hearing about your new offerings. Says, wishing everyone an easeful weekend. Yes, I agree. Thank you, Rachel, for being here. Bonnie says, Tanya is awesome too. Adore you all. Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for acknowledging Tanya's awesomeness. She definitely is awesome, and we need to sing her praises much more here on the channel. Taku says, thank you, Spencer. Amazing job as always. Thank you, Taku. Appreciate you stopping in each week, and love hearing the perspective, the European perspective as well. So keep on keeping us aware of the different corners of the world here. I love being able to hear things from a universal perspective. Karen, thank you for being here, and thank you for your commitment to being here each week and your support of both myself and Tanya's work. So appreciate you, my friend. Thank you, Carl and Javiera, who are here, and Kate, who is stopping in today. Thanks to everyone who made some nice comments in the chat. Appreciate all of you. Hope that you have a great weekend, and I hope that you have a great Virgo and Libra season in September, and that the eclipse season is treating you okay. And yeah, let's be kind to one another. Let's practice our nonviolent communication. Let's practice our empathy. Let's create some space between the emotions that come up and our sometimes very righteous anger, but then figure out the right solutions to create restorative justice in our communities and in our world, so that we can break the generational cycle, the generational curse of perpetuating violence, right? We can create the type of society that we want, that is based on equality and peace, and that appreciates this beautiful planet and all the resources and distributes them equally, so we can all have our needs and feelings and needs met and have everything that we need. We have enough to go around. We just need to figure out how to help connect people with it. And that's what I hope to do here. And I hope that we can all bring that energy out into the world. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you. Have a great one, and we'll see you next time. Peace.